Hey, what's up, HHC? Wait, hold on one sec. Hey, HHC, can you hear me? There we go, HHC.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, man.
Excellent.
Okay,
cool. Real worried it was going to be a real boomer space here, Jordan.
No guarantees that it won't be, but it's going okay so far.
Amazing.
Yes, we got some people filing in. That's good. Let me see what Pinesap is up to. Give me just a sec.
Got an interesting Candace Owens tweet here about Nick and the trending groypers.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of get into that too a little bit. Because
I'm not sure. I'm probably not going to disagree with you guys on some of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't. Hold on one sec. Let me see.
I have not been situation monitoring today, though. So
I have off and on. I have a couple people that want to speak. Let me get Pinesap in first and kind of get it going, and then I'll, as we go, I'll approve.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, but I want to see if we can get Pinesap for. There he is. Got Pinesap on. And
I've jotted down a bunch of stuff that that'd be interesting topics or whatever, so we can kind of roll through or have more people do questions.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit first. Awesome, Pinesap, you there, man?
Yeah, can you hear me? Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, perfect.
You are. You're actually twice as loud for me as Jordan is.
Oh, that's funny.
Am I too low? Like, is it?
No, you're good. You're perfect.
Okay, cool.
No, you're good. No, y'all are both fine. Don't worry about it.
Well, awesome, man. I guess we can kind of get started. So, yeah, this is my very first space that I've ever hosted. This is the first thing I've ever moderated. Like HHC and I were kind of talking about outside of this, maybe this will turn out to not be much of a debate. Maybe it'll be much more amicable and there will be much more middle ground than we think there will be. I just kind of wanted to give HHC and Pinesap kind of a chance to go over some theology stuff that I know they may disagree on, maybe some America First stuff, maybe some Jewish influence stuff, which I know you guys have butted heads on a little bit in the past. So no reason for this to be completely contentious. It can be amicable. I think it probably will be more than I know people love to see the sparks fly in these kind of debates, but I think it might be amicable, but I'm just curious to see how it goes. For my end, at least, I know both of you guys personally. I know HHC personally. I know Pinesap personally, and both of you guys are great guys. Just stating my bias, as HHC kind of knows already, I do kind of lean more towards the Pinesap side of the equation. I'm a Catholic. I'm obviously somewhat involved in the America First, Groyper, Nick Fuentes sphere, so biases are already out there, but I'm going to do my best to just kind of moderate this and guide the convo. So yeah, if you guys want to, Pinesap, do you want to do an intro really quick, just to kind of, state kind of where you're coming from and who you are and stuff?
Oh, for sure. Real quick, Jordan, I think it's important. We should say a prayer for the repose of Charlie Kirk's soul. I know you and I had talked about that in DMs, and I'm glad I remembered before we forgot. Go ahead.
No, I was a little nervous to even start this, so I'm a little scatterbrained, but yeah, 100%. I think that would be a great first step. I also don't want it to be in bad taste and kind of be like, now that, I don't want it to feel like we're moving on from that whole thing, because it's still very heavy on people's hearts. So Yeah, actually, Pinesap, I'll let you lead a prayer if you'd like, man. You're probably a little better suited than me.
Oh, fantastic. I'll lead us in a prayer, and then if you could time it, Jordan, and then just butt in when it's up. Why don't we have a just 10-second period of silence right after the prayer, and then we can get started with intros. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me, man. Go for it.
Awesome. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Holy Trinity, Lord God, we ask humbly that you entreat Charlie Kirk to your most sacred heart, that you protect him, his soul, his eternal soul, that he may be entered into your heavenly kingdom, that you may love him and embrace him with the Father's love that you've embraced so many of us with, that he was a good man, and even if we may have disagreed on particular points he may have made in his life or had different viewpoints than him, that ultimately, first and foremost, he was a child of God, he was a father, and he was someone who believed in you. And we just humbly ask, Lord, that you have clemency, you have love upon him, and that he may enter your heavenly kingdom if it so be your will. And we pray this all in your name through the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Yeah, beautifully said, Pinesap. And yeah, let's definitely keep Charlie in our prayers. It's this topic is pretty tough to tackle. So yeah, still pretty shocking. And thanks for reminding me about that prayer. So
oh no, of course.
yeah. I don't. I guess before we get started, HHC, do you want to do an intro for yourself? I know Pinesap kind of led us in a prayer really quick, and do you want to just intro yourself and just lay out who you are and everything?
Yeah, so I'm HitlerHatedChrist. I really just mostly do things on Twitter. I've got a Substack and YouTube channel I've done some things in that I've kind of expanded out into. I post a lot around general World War II, National Socialist related things, the intersection of that and theology, and then also the intersection of current events and politics and theology. That's kind of the areas where I swim. And I'm a Reformed Protestant, so.
Awesome, man. Perfect. And Pinesap, do you want to do an intro for yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Pinesap. I'm a Catholic apologist who is primarily associated with America First, headed by Nicholas J. Fuentes. I love my Catholic faith. It's the air that I breathe. It's the ground that I walk. And I've made it my mission to try and convert as many people as possible to Catholicism, primarily focusing on people in the dissident right, that space that I didn't feel had enough adequate Catholic representation. And so I try to approach apologetics from that kind of sphere.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll definitely say about both of you guys is that I do obviously believe y'all are both men of God, God-fearing, Christ-fearing people. So there's no debate there. Do we want to? So HHC, you said you had some things. What started this off, at least, was a couple weeks ago. I saw an interaction between Pinesap and HHC. And it revolved around Jewish influence, and I think HHC or Pinesap kind of levied the accusation a little bit that HHC said that he cherry picks some articles with regards to talking about Jewish influence and some of his sources. And what HHC said was that, I think your tweet was something like, if you feel, I guess this is a good place to start, if you feel the guilt, if you feel as a Catholic that you are being guilted by the Holocaust, then you're a weirdo. And that kind of set off some fireworks between you two. And I think that might be a good place to start.
Can I correct you, Jordan, real quick? Just real fast.
Go for it.
So I'm pretty sure what I said was, if you feel guilt because of the Holocaust, not necessarily if you feel guilted. Because I don't think people that just feel guilted if they're like, wrongly, somebody's coming over and telling them that because they're a Catholic, they're at fault, that if they feel guilted, they're a weirdo. But if you feel like actual guilt as somebody living in current year for the Holocaust, especially as a Christian, or more specifically, a Catholic, I think that I would put you in the weirdo category.
Okay. So are you denying, would you say that guilting is happening and is coming from a very specific place?
So I'd say there's a few things going on. I think the degree that it is occurring is exaggerated, at least in some of these spaces I am online. And I also think, and this is, I think, where Pinesap and I kind of went to immediately after we were talking about that meme, was the degree in which that's coming from folks that are Jewish, either religiously or ethnically, which we can kind of get into in a little bit here, as opposed to my perspective, which was sort of a broader view on like apostates and theological libs or atheists that have kind of pushed that broadly. And so one of the things was that article, or that meme that you referenced earlier, it has a bunch of headlines that were written that were kind of implying, a few of them are pretty direct and pretty provocative, saying things like, oh man, I don't remember. Let me pull it up real quick.
Yeah, I should have done
why
a little
Catholics
due diligence,
must. Well, this
yeah.
is a different one. I actually went through and gathered a bunch of other ones while I was looking through this. It's impossible to ignore Pope Francis's growing Jewish problem. Things like this, and I started looking at this because there were a few articles in that meme that referenced like a rabbi or something like this that made some offhanded statement. But as I was looking through these articles, it seemed like a good chunk of them, and when I started looking for more of these online just to see kind of the lay of the land, I was finding a lot of these written by these Jesuit guys that didn't have any indication of being even like genetically Jewish, and then also a lot of like super lib Anglicans and atheists, like apostate guys. And there were definitely some Jewish people in there, but I didn't feel like this was sort of like an overwhelmingly Jewish representation, like an overwhelming Jewish representation in that. It seemed like everybody that kind of like was left-leaning, period, was using it as a cudgel broadly. And me as a Christian in the US, I mean, I've never had anybody make me feel guilty for the Holocaust. So this is just something that I felt was a little bit exaggerated.
Okay, got it. Pinesap, would you have much of a beef with what he just said, or kind of where are you at with regards to what HHC, where he's coming from with this at this angle?
I would. I have a huge contention, because the problem is that when I see the narrative surrounding roughly the Holocaust at broad, especially in how it's applied to the Catholic Church, it is primarily in the interests of Jews, whether religious, whether secular, it doesn't matter. A Jew is a Jew is a Jew, even in their own religion. You can look on My Jewish Learning, and they even say, even if a Jew doesn't believe in God, even if a Jew rejects God, they're still, considered as a part of the tribe, right? And we know this. I mean, even Rabbi Mendel Schneerson, or I believe Mendel was his first name, but Rabbi Schneerson, who many in Chabad thought was the Messiah, said that even if a Jew does not believe in God, he still is considered a Jew, and he's still considered a part of that chosen people. And so that's why they have a high in-group preference, right? Even when it's ranging from an Orthodox rabbi to a secular Jew who considers themselves an atheist broadly. Now, we might ask the question, when Goyim or Gentiles come in and they write an article attacking the Catholic Church, how does that apply to Jews? And what I would say is that those Gentiles get funding from Jews. They're supported by Jewish organizations. They oftentimes write for Jewish-owned businesses. I mean, one only needs to look at the, I believe it's called the Israeli Times or Forward, and see more than enough articles written attacking the church from a Jewish perspective on the basis of the Holocaust. In fact, I have literally one pulled up right in front of me by Forward. This was written, it doesn't seem to have the date on it, but I would imagine it was written around probably more the early 2010s, late 2000s, based on the it being the pontificate of Pope Benedict XVI. But the headline reads, "Pope's Show of Words, Did He Fall Short?" And it directly cites the Ashkenazic chief rabbi of Israel, Meir Lau, who both under the pontificate of St. John Paul II and the pontificate of Pope Benedict XVI, said that they didn't sufficiently atone for the Holocaust, that they didn't sufficiently apologize, and that the church has been this institution of historical anti-Semitism. You can see even non-Jews supported heavily by Jewish interests, such as the apostate priest James Carroll, writing his famous book, Constantine's Sword, which is a history of quote unquote Jewish persecution on the behalf of Catholics, and that we should walk on our hands and knees because we, I guess, hurt a Jewish person's feelings. And so even when there are non-Jews in these organizations or at large in academia, we have to understand that even sometimes if they're not writing for the Forward or they're not writing for Israeli Times or what have you, they are still supported by Jews. They are still supported by the larger Jewish academia and Jewish intelligentsia. And I don't mean Jewish intelligentsia like all Jews meet in a giant cave in the middle of the earth and, say, let's attack the Catholic Church today. But this is a general swath. This is a general trend that we see amongst Jewish culture, right? I see efforts to erase the Jewish responsibility in anti-Catholic bigotry as on par or next to liberals apologizing for when Muslims commit mass shootings or large terrorist attacks, and all we're told is, well, those are just extremists. They're not true Muslims. Well, I can grant that, the guy who probably owns the Euro shop down the road from me isn't going to blow me up or cut off my head, but I can also grant that he is a part of a religion that does believe that, right? And so when we talk about Jews at large, I'm not talking about, the nice woman who worked in my hometown Sam's Club that around Hanukkah, is wearing a Hanukkah sweater and is wishing me a Merry Christmas. But I am talking about this larger Jewish intelligentsia or Jewish academic interest that does see the Catholic Church as a threat and knows that it has a lot of clout in leveraging the Holocaust to attack the Catholic Church. And I think this is a very large problem. I think this is something that they frequently use to go after the church and go after Catholics. And my original contention with HHC's comments about, if you feel guilted by it, you're a weirdo. I don't feel any guilt for the Holocaust because I didn't do anything wrong, right? I wasn't there. I didn't kill anybody. Good. I would never kill anybody, right?
There you go.
And I when I see Catholics like St. Titus Brandsma, St. Edith Stein, Pope Pius XII, all these men and women of God who even gave their lives for innocent Jews during that period, and Jews spit on and denigrate their memory, I about get so angry I see red. So I'll leave it at that. I know that was a very verbose sort of retelling, but I'm not sure where HHC stands on that, given more context, but that's where I'm operating from. My problem is never, look, you don't have to dislike Hitler or whatever. That's not my concern. I'm not a Hitler apologist. I'm a Catholic apologist, right? And all I am concerned about is defending the Catholic Church's honor and dignity. But I do see that Jews do try to use the Holocaust to attack Catholics at large. And even when there are good Jews, like the gentleman who wrote The Myth of Hitler's Pope, they are drowned out by the larger Jewish voices that do try to leverage the Holocaust to attack the Catholic Church. And that's my piece.
Okay, cool. So just like a couple things, and you can kind of help me explain or help me understand. So I understand your sentiment. I think some of the disconnect may be around what is like overrepresentation versus a controlling interest. So, like, for instance, you mentioned, was it James Carroll? I looked into him actually a little bit before this because I was trying to find articles that were in this same vein, and he seemed to be a pretty vitriolic guy. And James Carroll's not a Jew, from what I could tell. And you mentioned that he's like sort of operating in accordance with Jewish academia. Can you are you saying that is there something more institutional that you can provide me for that? Or are you considering, because he's like a PhD and a professor or whatever, that you kind of just put him in that camp of captured by Jewish influence, or that, like, kind of help me understand that.
I can give you a direct example of one person that would represent what I'm talking about in regards to academia. So Joseph Sobrin, I believe, writing back in the early 90s, remarks that in an April issue of Commentary magazine back then, there was an article written by Robert S. Witzrich, I believe I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, who, when I looked up his Wikipedia page, he's the descendant of leftist Polish Jews. And he wrote an article called "The Pope, the Church, and the Jews." And he was, at least, and may still be, the professor of modern Jewish history at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And in a document, it's not magisterial or anything, but a document put out by the Vatican called "We Remember," which talks about how, the church, of course, doesn't want to elevate anyone who treats someone with any lack of dignity because they're Jewish or what have you. And, it was written to remember the period of the Holocaust or what have you. He basically says that this is not enough, that the church needs to atone for ages of anti-Semitism, that the church is just the big bad boogeyman of history, and that there is this large swath of history of Jews being oppressed by Catholics that was not sufficiently atoned for in a document like that. I even remember a good friend of mine, Alan Rule, recently, or not recently, but in the past 2 years, had a contention with a rabbi who was writing a book attacking Catholics on the same basis. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think literally the title of one of the manuscripts or drafts for the book might have been someone else, but it was literally called "From the Gospel to the Gas Chamber," was attacking Catholics on the same basis. This guy, I believe, is a rabbi, and he, for a long time, wanted to maintain dialogue between Jews and Christians as an ecumenical effort. So that when I talk about Jewish academia, I'm not just saying it as a big boogeyman. I'm saying that there's money and interest.
But are you talking about Jews specifically in academia, or are you talking about guys like James Carroll that are in academia, and so you're drawing a line between academia and considering it Jewish to James Carroll?
I'm considering that the prevailing sentiment within academia, that this is primarily a Jewish sentiment, is that the Catholic Church was either complicit or responsible for the Holocaust, and that men like James Carroll, even though they are not Jewish, still have a part to play in upholding that narrative, because that is the prevailing sentiment.
Okay, so I would say that the primary, you used a good term there. That was a primary impetus or something. What was it? The primary something.
I'm trying to remember.
It's okay. That was a good phrase. I would say that primary impetus is not from Judaism within academia, but it's just purely secularism. And I think this is validated by looking at the type of people in academia that are writing these articles. I'm not finding these articles from people who are traditional Catholics or evangelicals who happen to have Jewish genetics, right? I'm finding these from generally people that are more secular. Most of the Jews that I did find talking about this were secular Jews. There were some rabbis in there, kind of sprinkled around. But it seems like I would say that Jews are absolutely overrepresented in that, but I wouldn't say it's a controlling interest in that. I think that's a much broader secular hatred for Christianity. And I think the Catholic Church, is being the largest institution in the Christian world, I think that makes it the most direct and easy target, or the largest target. And that just seems to make a lot more sense to me, because you got a lot of these guys who I'm not convinced, for instance, that James Carroll really has some actual Jewish kind of Talmudic whatever going on that he is operating in his psyche that makes him really concerned about the Holocaust. I think he's an apostate, which he is, and hates Christianity because he loves secularism. And I think he's applying that in every way that he can, and it just so happens that the Holocaust is one of those ways he could do it. So the way just as I'm looking at all these articles, it's if I think about it, as like a religiously Jewish impetus, I have a lot of explaining to do for all these other different people that are in all these other different organizations all throughout all these universities of the world, whose only connection to Jews is that I guess they're in academia.
But here's the problem, right? So secular Jews, even though they're not going to the synagogue on Saturday necessarily, or trying to keep, Shabbat, or participating, maybe they're lucky if they even participate in Hanukkah around the, Christmas season or what have you. They are still formed by people who did grow up in that culture, right? It's like how in Latin American countries, even though you have sometimes very staunch atheists or staunch secularists, they still remark that that Latin flavor of culture is still deeply embedded with Catholicism, and that it's kind of in some aspects inescapable. And I think that's the same thing with secular Jews. I'm not saying that in the Talmud, there's a principle saying, hey, this event called the Holocaust is going to happen, use this to attack the Catholic Church. But I think that animosity, that historical animosity that rabbis coming over on ships to Ellis Island resolutely instilled within their congregants, within the people who listened to them, has carried over into the generations and has even carried over into secular Jews and secular Jewish academia.
Okay, so let me kind of clarify. I wasn't talking about like James Carroll as a secular Jew. He's like an example of one that's not Jewish.
No. I know you weren't. I know you weren't.
Okay. Because there's guys like Richard Bordeaux and like John L. Allen Jr. and all these. Like when I tried to find articles related to this, it was like the majority of the authors were not even secular Jews. Like they were like not even genetically Jewish people.
But this kind of brings up something that I think is important to remember, right? So if we take, for instance, the case of Galileo, right, as another axiom or axis by which people attack the Catholic Church, many of the people that use that as an axiom to attack the Catholic Church did not live through the Enlightenment. But you have to ask for a moment, why do they see that as an axiom or a passageway to attack the Catholic Church? Well, it's because the culture of the Enlightenment created a petri dish of such that allowed them to use the case of Galileo to say the church is anti-science, the church has repudiated her own infallibility because she got this scientific thing wrong. Therefore, since these Enlightenment figures created a culture using the case of Galileo to attack the church as anti-scientific, we too can use it. And I think that's the same thing with someone like James Carroll. Yes, James Carroll is not Jewish, right? I mean, literally the name Carroll, I think that's like Irish or something, right? Carroll is not Jewish, but we have to ask the question, why does Carroll even live in a culture that has the impetus to use the Holocaust as emotional and rhetorical leverage against the Catholic Church? And that is because of Jews.
So you would say that you would sort of lay secularism like in its totality at the feet of not Judaism, because we're not talking religiously, but Jews, including everybody like genetically Jewish.
In a way, yes, and in a way, no. And what I mean by that is there's a little bit more nuance in that. For instance, I have been attacked in the circles I run in because I do truly believe that there are Jews throughout history that accepted Christ into their heart, became Catholic, and they are some of the greatest Catholics that have ever lived in history. And some people say, well, a Jew will always be a Jew, even if the waters of baptism fall upon his head. I don't agree with that. However, even nuancing... go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I've posted about that pretty extensively within National Socialism. That was a sentiment as well, that like there was propaganda produced that was images of Jews that were leaving church, but were like looking lustfully at young women. And it would be like, the tagline would be, baptism did not make him a non-Jew, right?
Right. Or things like the poisonous mushroom would be another example of that. The Children's Tale. Sorry, Jordan, what were you saying?
No, I was just going to say that I was going to bring that up to HHC actually, because that's something that we had talked about. And I'm not as informed on this topic. I'm more letting you guys go off here. But I think something you asked me, HHC, was basically, is that a sentiment that I agree with, that like, the idea that there were never any like saved Jews, basically. And I wanted to get to that at some point, but I feel like Pinesap kind of answered it there.
Yeah, well, not even if they're not saved, I guess, but whether you can even consider them Jews in terms of like ascribing derogatory beliefs to them on the basis of that, if they're believers.
So if I might answer that, because it actually was a part of a longer answer that I had. So there are great, I like to call them Hebrew Catholics because of their background, but great Hebrew Catholics throughout history that represent what it truly means to be Catholic, like the Lemon Brothers around the time of Vatican I, St. Edith Stein. I know that even St. Ignatius of Loyola hailed from a Sephardic family that had converted a long time ago. But there are also those men who I do consider Jews because they were conversos. They did not accept the Catholic faith. They were directly subversive to the Catholic Church. They hated the Catholic Church and kept the name Catholic as a means of trying to subvert her. And I'm thinking of two specific figures here. Jules Isaac, may his name be blotted out throughout history. I despise that man with all my heart, who wrote his life's work was basically condemning the church fathers, condemning the medieval saints, saying that all their anti-Semitism and hatred was so horrible and that the church needs to repudiate that. The church needs to condemn them because that kind of attitude led to the Holocaust. And Gregory Baum, the disgraced Catholic priest who left the church to marry a woman who he was fornicating with, divorced her, and then lived an openly gay lifestyle, who was so proud of his Judaism that at the Second Vatican Council, he attempted to say that the conversion of a Jewish person was akin to the Holocaust because that was destroying their Jewish identity. Those men, who I hope we forget their names and they're lost to the sands of time, I do consider Jewish. I don't think that they were ever Catholic. I don't think that they were sincere about Christ. I don't think they were followers of Christ. I think that they were actually enemies of Christ because they valued their false Judaism or their Jewish identity above what it meant to truly be a Catholic and a Christian.
How and to be clear, I'm not Catholic, but I can tell you that I would agree that if somebody believes that Jews do not need Christ to be saved, that would put them completely outside the bounds of what I would consider a Christian.
I really do appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. I hope you know that.
So the only people kind of in my area that would say that would be some like very extreme, like televangelist tier dispensationalists like John Hagee. I really haven't been able to find anybody else. So I think on some level, some of that's been avoided in certain circles. But it's, there's always little bits of it all over the place. One thing that I was curious about, like, how would you feel toward Trent Horn? Because I've seen quite a bit of vitriol toward him, referring to him just sort of like broadly as a Jew and attacking him on that basis. What's your?
I do think that Trent Horn is a Catholic. I don't doubt the sincerity of his faith, but I do think that he needs to stand up for the church and he needs to put the interests of Jews to the side, because I do think that he has been too concerned with offending Jewish people. And I don't mean that, whenever I say that, people, because I'm a Groiper, think that I'm expecting him to raise up his right arm in a Roman salute and, hail the Führer or something like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that when Jews attack the Catholic Church, he needs to be more on our side as a Catholic, because I do think he is one, but I don't think.
Do you have an example maybe where he has not kind of lived up to that degree of defense of your church that you?
I think considering the recent attacks on Pope Francis in the past year when he came out in support of Palestine and the Jewish press, Forward, the Israel Times, what were just mercilessly attacking him. I think he should have checked, like I did, John Allen Jr. for attacking Pope Francis and saying he has a Jewish problem, because quite frankly, if Pope Francis has a Jewish problem, I have a Jewish problem too. And I think he needs to be a greater voice, that whether it is a non-Jew or a Jew attacking the church or attacking the popes or what have you on the basis of Jewish interests, he needs to stand up. Because one thing that he said, for instance, when we were bringing up like the Fourth Lateran Council or what St. Louis IX did with the burning of the 24 cartloads of the Talmud, that is an action every single Catholic should defend full-throated, full-heartedly. If you cannot defend St. Louis IX burning that blasphemous collection of texts, I do challenge the integrity of your Catholic faith, because I'm not really concerned with what a false religion that hates our Lord thinks about our religion. I'm concerned with what Christ thinks and with what our saints thinks, and I think that is the totality by which we should operate. And I don't think that Trent has sufficiently defended the saints nor defended historical figures in the church that were more critical of Jews, such as Venerable Cardinal Augustus Holon, who, when the Germans were actually starting the sort of prelude to the Holocaust, he did condemn the violence against innocent Jews, but he also, in the same breath, was able to be honest about their direct participation in liberalism and communism and the selling of pornography and the direct attacks on the Catholic Church that they were engaged in at that time. Someone can do both things at the same time. I don't think that it's wrong to condemn actual examples of persecution towards Jews and I really do not think that Catholics have ever been responsible for persecuting Jews. I will die on that hill, but I think you can condemn unjust persecution and still be critical of Judaism.
So for Horn, it would be a sort of like a lack of defense of the church when those things are going on, given his position, more so than like a defense of like that he's like done something directly wrong. Is that what I'm hearing right? Or
I think you're almost about correct. I would just caveat it slightly with, I don't also like how he does ankle bite those of us who do have the courage to show our face and, even at the risk of putting our lives on the line, be critical of Judaism. And we risk being killed. We literally risk being gunned down and having our lives ruined. And to see someone who I call a brother in Christ counter signal me for that really hurts, and it makes me very angry.
What did he? I'm just this is kind of like a side now. I'm just kind of curious. What did he counter signal you?
I think the frequent condemnations of Nick Fuentes. I think challenging the integrity of Nick's faith. I think I literally last summer, I believe it was last summer, tried to organize a charitable dialogue with him on Judaism and its role in attacking the Catholic Church and why we need to stand more up to Jews. And I made it very clear it was not my intention to troll him. I was coming from a very sincere place, and he was willing to shelf that conversation. But then he goes on the whatever podcast with Destiny, and he's perfectly fine with talking about Destiny finding it all right to have sex with children and animals. But I guess being critical of Jews is just a bridge too far for him.
Pinesap, where do you think that comes from with Trent Horn? Do you think that it's a desire for like mainstream acceptance, or do you think it's more having to do with his Jewishness? I mean, what do you think there?
I think
because he is ethnically Jewish.
He is
right?
He is ethnically Jewish. So again, I don't challenge the sincerity of his faith. I do think that he is a Catholic. I think at the end of the day, he is someone who does believe in what the church teaches and would die for our faith. But there's a twofold effort here. I do think that he is trying to be accepted by Con Inc. and that group that I've called out numerous times that's trying to be accepted by Con Inc. I call Catholic Inc. Because, oh, by the way, if my power goes out, there's just a storm raging outside. I didn't drop the space. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I just want to make that aware. There's like a lot of lightning and thunder. But anyhow,
Jordan and I will argue about something if that happens. We'll come up with
that's perfect. I'll reconnect.
To argue about. Go for it, Pinesap.
But I think he, like all members of Catholic Inc., are trying to have mainstream acceptance, and being critical of Jews is a big no, you can't do that in the mainstream of Con Inc. I think there's also an element of his grandfather, apparently, when he was in the military, was bullied for being ethnically Jewish. And thus, I think his ancestors, when they crossed to Ellis Island, changed their name from Hornstein to Horn. And I think there might be some trauma coming from that background that he's kind of carried with him. And so when he hears the issue of anti-Semitism brought up, it is a emotional sort of guttural reaction rather than one where he's clearly thinking with his head. But I would very much encourage him to look inside his heart and realize nobody is attacking you, dude, for being ethnically Jewish. We are concerned with the fact that Jewish groups do frequently attack the church, and we just want you to be on our side. And we're a little tired of the ankle biting that comes from you whenever they start to bully and we start to fight back. It feels very cold and disingenuous. And I would even call Matt Fradd out for being complicit in that culture as well. I mean, the guy had Apostate Prophet on, and Apostate Prophet is so insane that he literally is willing to not follow Christ, not follow the true faith if it's critical of Israel. And he said that there's no innocence in Palestine. I mean, the guy's a madman. You know, you can apparently have him on your show, but, you know, having, again, someone who's just critical of Judaism, that's, I guess, a bridge too far. That's the big no-no.
Yeah, I feel like Taylor Marshall has done a good job of kind of walking that line of mass acceptance, but also having the back of people that are a little critical of Israel, at least from what I've seen from him over the last year or so.
I would agree.
And then HHC, unless there was something you wanted to add to that specifically.
Well, real quick, I kind of wanted to just a few things on here. So I guess what really about the Trent Horn stuff, and I know there's a lot of interpersonal stuff that you've kind of just described, or not interpersonal maybe, but different things that have gone on behind the scenes with Trent Horn, and like whether he has been more willing to put his neck out to be against certain things or not, or related to Jews or things like this. I guess from my perspective, if somebody is exhibiting that they are a regenerated believer, and not to get into a lot of stuff with Catholicism versus Protestantism and things like this, but because I think it does map both ways because it's in Scripture to a degree. If somebody is exhibiting that they're a new creation, like we read about in 2 Corinthians 5, the preceding verse in that passage where it talks about, oh, sorry, I just got a lot of echo from somebody. I'm good. The preceding verse in that passage where it talks about somebody being a new creation in Christ talks about regarding no one according to the flesh who is a brother in Christ, right? So that I kind of would see, I've seen so much vitriol toward Trent Horn on the basis of him being Jewish, and kind of from my perspective, I haven't really seen anything to sort of justify that. And that's just one of a lot of things that lead me to come to the conclusion that there is a lot of sort of unchristian treatment of Jews growing on the right. I don't think it's anywhere near like the biggest issue in the, you know, the US today, but I see that as sort of growing and being tolerated even among people that profess to be Christians. And I think it is contrary to that specific passage that I'm talking about, where if somebody is a regenerate believer, I don't think that we should diminish them on the basis of like their genetics or consider them somehow different from us on that basis, unless they exhibit something that really makes that very clear, that they're not a believer.
Fair enough. Did Pinesap, did you take issue with anything HHC said there? Not particularly.
I actually wouldn't say I take great issue. There's just some caveats and some nuances that I'd like to add. I have caught a lot of flack for being good friends with and associating with people who come from an ethnic Jewish background or accepting Catholicism. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Those people who accept Christ in their heart, who are authentically Catholic, they're not conversos, they're not Judaizers, but they are authentically Catholic and they come from a Jewish ethnic background. I would die for every single one of them. I consider them brothers in Christ, and if you have a problem with them, you have a problem with me. And I don't care if that makes me in some, freak Wignat's eyes, a Shabbos Goy or right, a race traitor or what have you. Fuck them. I have no desire to prove myself to those people. I only care about what God thinks of me. But
does that include Horn?
Well, what I was going to say about Horn is Horn decided to fire the first shot because the thing is, he went after Nick in such a way that it wasn't mere criticism of I don't like Nick, but was challenging Nick's right and role as a believer. When Nick has frequently defended Pope Francis from unjust accusations and has encouraged his audience to be obedient to the Holy Father, to be obedient to all 21 ecumenical councils and the magisterium, and accept all the teachings of Christ contained in his Catholic Church. And I think that was a low ball for Trent. I think that was incredibly dishonest. I still think that he owes Nick an apology for that. And I think that was the basis on which people were starting to challenge the integrity of his Catholicism, because he really came out swinging against a brother in Christ in such a lowballed way that it made, I think, a lot of people question, well, whose side are you really on at the end of the day, my brother? Now, I don't agree with the unjust attacks on him, and I think that Groypers have actually maintained a lot of kindness to him when the chips are down. I mean, considering the horrible state that Laura has gone through with, I believe, her tumor that emerged, Nick encouraged his audience to pray for her. He condemned anyone who said something nasty like Groyper curse or anything like that. He said, no, like, that is not okay. We want to pray for her. We hope for her health and well-being and stuff like that. And I think he acted in a very charitable way towards Trent when the chips were down.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That it was kind of Horn who fired the first shot, and I don't really think a lot of people initially were just saying, "Oh, this guy's a Jew. He can't be Catholic." I think, like Pinesap said, a lot of that came from kind of his initial attacks on Nick and some of the nasty things he had to say about his followers. So, yeah, point taken.
HHC,
one thing. Oh yeah.
Just real quick, this isn't a point against you, HHC. I just wanted to interject with something that I notice. You know, we go out of our way when all is said and done at the end of the day, and I think this is very evidenced by the recent tragedy that befell Charlie Kirk. Despite our differences with him and our disagreements, at the end of the day, he was a Christian, a father, and I think all of us, our hearts go out to him, and we just wish he was still here with us. When we act in a cordial way, or we act in a professional way, or we act in a Christ-like way, it seems like these figures from Con Inc. are so willing to slander us and still throw us under the bus and treat us. I apologies for the language, but treat us like shit. I have people who I have never met before and I've never had a conversation with make up just all kinds of nasty rumors about me and even challenge my Catholic faith just because I associate with this movement and just because I'd be willing to die for it and give my life for it. Some have said that I hate people based on the color of their skin, that I dissent from the magisterium, that I don't uphold the teachings of popes or what have you, and there's no basis in reality for that. You can call me a sinner, you can call me a imperfect follower of Christ, but you are not going to say that I'm not Catholic. And I see from those Con Inc. people them treating us so horribly and going out of their way to slander us when I think we have acted and conducted ourselves very much in a way that was surprising to the depiction that they give of us. And that was, and everything I said there was not directed towards HHC. I think is just something that needs to be said for the record. Those people are very nasty and I think vindictive.
Fair. Yeah, I know. Just real quick, I want to point out, and I know I'll have people in my DMs that are very anti-Groyper, and I would say to a large degree, I think I'm probably accurately described as anti-Groyper. Just and JB kind of knows some of this as well, but I do I do try to give Nick props when he does do things that are positive. I did appreciate about half of the stream on Thursday night.
I believe that was Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like live texting Jordan about that at the time, and I think that like there was definitely a lot of good stuff in there. I don't know. There's sort of a disconnect going on between internet Christianity and the temperament of believers that I know in real life. And one of these things, and this is I kind of brought this up a little bit tangentially when I was talking about the on Thursday, the stream with Nick, and some of it is profanity, where it's like if I have a clip of Nick where he may be saying something great, I'm going to be very hesitant to share that and then share it also with people in my church on the basis of whatever, if he's being pretty profane. What is your thoughts kind of on that? And like have you ever had that same sense? Like, do you have folks that you know in your church that you would be hesitant on that basis to say, like this may be not something that they're, because they may just open it and listen to it in the car with their kids around? Or
I think while we should always strive to use more godlike language, and I most certainly in my own life am striving more and more to do so, I think that there is a time where there are many Christians who don't see the forest through the trees, and when a man is kind of driven to his limit, or he's driven to this bad spot, because things are bad right now, whether we like to say it or not, and he says something like, these fucking people or something like that, I don't see any problem with that. I think that Christians have been too timid for too long. Even if I was to grant that it may be best to avoid that language, I don't think that it is on such a basis that it should allow someone to write that person off. And so I do agree with the sentiment that I think we should always strive for better language in terms of not being so profane. But at the same time, I think when we are in a war, if someone is going to write someone off completely just because they say the F word or whatever, I think that's not seeing the forest through the trees. And I think that's being incredibly nitpicky, I would say.
So I would agree on some level when it comes to using the F word or whatever to refer to just sort of like it as exaggeration of like this effing whatever.
Right.
What I guess there's sort of two things, and I posted about this that kind of like were a jolt to me as I was watching the Thursday stream with Nick, and I'm interested in your take on this. Was he did a really pretty good defense of what I would even agree with as the gospel as a Protestant. I was really happy to see him affirm, which I think is in the Catholic Catechism, about the universal collective guilt for Christ's death. I thought that was positive. I saw a lot of good things in that stream. And then he even referenced like how we shouldn't be murdering each other with our words. And then like 10 minutes later, he called a specific individual that was his political enemy a cocksucker. Right.
Well, who was this particular individual?
I'd have to check. I don't think it was somebody. Was it Hassan?
It was Hassan Piker, because he was talking about how Hassan glibly made it a gun control issue and was very snarky about Charlie's death.
I will go on record and say I would also agree. I think Hassan Piker's a cocksucker, and I think Destiny is too. And I know that's strong language, but when you're celebrating the death of a father and a Christian, I think that the time for polite language is not really a basis with people that are that demonic.
Okay, so are sort of biblical exhortations against that not applicable on that basis? Because like, if I polled 100 people in my church, and I bet maybe even your church, I don't know where you go to church, and about that, I have a feeling I may get a very different answer.
I think that
do you think I'm wrong on that, or
I think this again goes back to my point of even if it is ultimately sort of best to avoid that language, I don't think that it is such an egregious act to call someone like that a cocksucker that it would warrant them being written off. Because you have to understand, if Hassan Piker,
I'm not saying to write them off. Like, to be clear, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if that is something that makes Christians feel, wow, I'm gonna have a hard time considering Nick as a Christian representative of my politics on that basis. Do you think that person is in the wrong for feeling that way? Or because I would say that the people at my church that would feel that way are probably listening to their conscience, and they're applying their expectations for their speech as a believer to somebody claiming to be a believer who's saying that, right? I mean,
I think that
am I wrong there? Or?
My thought is, if you want to encourage Nick or anyone else, myself included, to use better language or what have you, I'm not against that mission. I would even say that I agree with it. But it reminds me of a story of Saint Joan of Arc having a rather foul-mouthed soldier in her army, and rather than saying, oh, I'm not going to associate with you because you use foul language, or I'm not going to consider you part of the French army because you have used foul language, she instead encouraged him, still seeing him as a brother and an ally, positively, just to use better language. If someone, for instance, let's say tweeted out, fully agree with Nick's stream, maybe I would encourage avoiding, terms like cocksucker or whatever in the future. But I think overall a great message or what have you. I see that person as an ally. But I think that if there are certain Christians that in this time when we have people who literally want to kill us and kill our children and are willing to shoot up schools with 6 to 11-year-olds in it, and they get squeamish over the word cocksucker, I would very much encourage them to this is going to sound blunt, but harden the fuck up. We're in a war. And I think if someone is going to, again, and I'm not saying you're writing them off when I say this, but, take such an issue that someone is unwilling to associate with another person because of it, they need to harden up. If they'd like to encourage that person to use better language, fully on board with that mission. I've got no qualms with it. But now is not the time to, I think, piety signal on the basis of something that is not a super egregious sin.
So I guess I understand your heart on that. I think I do. But I have a hard time saying that the people that I know that have an issue with that are piety signaling. Because I think they're actually just Christians, just pretty normal Christians that are applying a pretty normal Christian behavioral standard that applies and it also is the contradiction within the same stream. I mean, I laud him for he affirmed the explicitly Catholic universal sanctity of life and humanity, and then he refers to his political enemies as people in air quotes, right? So it's I think people are picking up, believers that I know pick up on that. And I think that hurts Nick's message. And that's kind of why it's but when I call it out, it's oh, you're counter signaling. It's no, I actually want Nick to conform to these things because there are people that I think would be significantly more likely to listen to some of the very good things I think he has said, but they're drawn away by that. And I don't have an argument for somebody that says this guy's not showing the fruit of salvation. Right? How do if somebody from my church, if I send a clip to somebody from my church and said, this guy's not showing the fruit of salvation to me, right? How would I argue on behalf of Nick on that? I don't have a lot of ammo.
At least people in my church, I mean, I know HHC, we go to different, obviously different churches here, but
yeah,
at least obviously, but at least people in my church and people in my personal life that I've showed Nick's clips to, I have heard that pushback before about the language, but it's almost, and this is at least the people I've shown it to, there is kind of especially if it's a very good point, a very salient point about religion or politics or something that really resonates with people, the most common response I get from people is, I wish he would tighten up on the language a little bit, but he is making a good point. Most people that I come across aren't writing him off because of that. They hear it, they may not love it, but then they do kind of say in the same breath, but he is making a good point, just probably needs to tighten up the language a little bit. That's what I've seen, at least.
Well, and I want to interject here because we have to remember the figure or the subject of who we're speaking about and who Nick directed that language towards, right? If Nick had directed that language towards, I'd say, someone who was not advocating for the celebration of Charlie Kirk's murder, I would say, okay, maybe you got a little bit more of a case there. Hassan Piker is a piece of shit, and he celebrated Charlie Kirk's murder and he exalted it. And I'm not really going to be offended when he rightly gets called a cocksucker for doing that. I think he is. I hope he's thrown in jail and I hope he rots in prison forever, because someone who is that inhuman, someone that is that inhumane, that would look at the horrific footage of a father and a Christian having his life taken just because of a political disagreement, doesn't deserve to have any rights. And I think that perspective that I shared there is firmly rooted in the Catholic tradition. Cardinal Gomez during the Spanish Civil War had no problem saying, to those who were just drafted into the Spanish Republican forces, right, and didn't know any better, they weren't communists, they weren't liberals, they weren't trying to take down the church or hate God. We show them full clemency and full mercy, but the enemies of God strike them down. And I think that's my same perspective. It's not contrary to God's mercy, but it's rather a fruit of it. Because when there is a withered vine that is trying to choke out the rest, it needs to be, and I'm not advocating for violence when I say this. I mean this in a rhetorical manner, but it needs to be cut off. A branch needs to come off. And our Lord used similar language, such as in the Gospels, saying, "As for my enemies, bring them here and slaughter them here before me." I know he wasn't literally saying, bring the Pharisees or whatever and kill them in front of me, but that rhetoric is very much a part of what it means to be a follower of Christ. Maybe, the language of, again, the term cocksucker or what have you, I think I can agree. It probably ultimately is best to avoid that, but I think when you have someone who is as immoral and evil as Hassan Piker, I think that's the least that he deserves, is to be called that term.
Do you think that, aside from the cocksucker term for Hassan, do you think that there's a degree of I had a guy in my chat that actually agrees with me against, on a lot of topics, that said, I think it was yesterday, that like these people that are celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder are not human and things like this. Would you say there's a degree of dehumanization that should never characterize a Christian's language and rhetoric, regardless of if they believe and assert truthfully and accurately in a prayer that God should strike this person down?
I think that there is a bit of hyperbole going on when that term is used. I know that Hassan Piker is human. I know that he is still someone made in the image of God, but he sure has transgressed God's commandments in such a way that I don't think it's wrong for us to have the sentiment that he should be struck down by the law.
I'm not saying the strike down thing. I think that we can actually, like, I weirdly enough, compared to a lot of people that agree with a lot of my perspectives, I'll extend a lot of charity to people that just have political beliefs around if the state should enforce biblical morality and things like that. And I'm more of a theonomist anyway, so I don't really have much of an issue with some of this to a degree that is structured and lawful, just. But I will say that, like, I do think that Christians shouldn't participate in dehumanization, especially super broadly, because as much as Nick, and you guys know Nick on a personal level significantly more than I do, as much as Nick may personally believe that people that he was referring to on Thursday night as people with, air quote fingers, are humans with souls who bear the image of God and all these things, I'm not certain, based on just what I've seen in a lot of these circles, that is the message that is being taken away. Would you say that is a authentic concern of mine, or like, do you think that's valid, or no? I
think the fruits that I've seen, I haven't seen a true dehumanization of anyone. I think it is, especially when I consider the Catholic tradition of coming from Scripture, of talking about certain groups of heretics, such as the Cathars, referring to them as animals or what have you, because they're if murder is horrible and kills the body, heresy, and when I say heresy, I need to make a distinction here. I don't mean what I would consider material heresy, such as Protestants born today. I don't think Protestants born today fit in the category of heretic I'm speaking about here in the slightest. If I believed that, I would be literally condemning my own friends and family, and that's the last thing I would do. But I think in a time when people were Catholic and they knew the Catholic faith, and they not only decided to apostatize from it, but lead other people outside the fold so that their souls would be killed, I don't think it was wrong for those people to be called animals and to be called unrighteous and wicked and even struck down at the edge of a sword. And that's why I think things like the Cathar Crusade, which the church gets attacked for all the time, were actually awesome and completely justified.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm not familiar with that specific historical example enough, but I would say, I mean, as a Protestant who's not, I don't hold myself to the magisterium on that. I would say that calling anyone an animal in a broad sense, especially, I would consider that to be like a denial of the Imago Dei. I would have an issue with that significantly more than even referring to someone as a cocksucker or whatever else. It just specifically, like in that stream on Thursday, that was something that stuck out to me as a dichotomy that I don't think I would be alone in catching that among the believers that I know, if they were to watch that. Anyway, so just to kind of move on a little bit here, because I think we've touched on that point quite a bit.
Oh, for sure.
And I do appreciate the discussion being cordial. Jay, what you
yeah. No, this has been good, man. I kind of had a feeling it would be. You two are both pretty measured guys, so I had a feeling it would be closer to this and not some contentious, horrible thing. So I did want to ask you, HHC, really quick, and probably after this we can open it up to some questions. I'm sorry, I saw people were requesting to speak. I wanted to get it going and kind of get into it before we get into questions, but we'll do that after this. But HHC, I wanted to ask you, because I've seen this claim kind of levied against you a little bit, and I think you kind of dispelled it, but you don't consider yourself a dispensationalist?
No, so I lean more on millennial covenant theology. So I'm a member of a Presbyterian church, PCA.
You're not HHC. You're not Jewish? What?
No, I'm not Jewish. I'm not Jewish genetically. Shocking. I took 23andMe because I was really curious, and I kept getting accused of being Jewish online like 2 or 3 years ago, and so I did 23andMe, and I almost, not because it wasn't, I guess, cool to know, but I was a little bit surprised and felt like I kind of wasted my money because what I got back was just entirely German and Nordic. So I didn't learn anything new. But I expected at least have like 3% Jewish or something in there, and I had
no
zilch.
docs. But after meeting you, the 23andMe, after knowing you for a few years, the 23andMe does line up with what you got back on your 23andMe.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, hyper Germanic over here. So, but anyway. Sorry, what was your question? I
was just asking about the dispensationalist thing because I do get that. I do see that as a claim levied against you online sometimes, at least, and I wanted to at least give you the chance to dispel that if that's not true.
Yeah, so I'm more amillennial, and like I said, covenant theology more than dispensational. I do think that dispensationalists are getting like really just raked over the coals online lately, which, because I do tend to be a lot more contrarian in some of these circles, does lend me to defending them, at least in some areas that I think that they're wrongly castigated. One of those would be, I've seen dispensationalism broadly defined as a belief that people who are genetically Jewish are saved and don't need Christ, right? That they're just like by default in that bucket. And that is not what dispensationalism is, at least in terms of historic claims or in what modern people believe who are like from DTS and are dispensationalist pastors and things like this. The only real exception to this I've been able to find are some like pretty fringe televangelist type guys like John Hagee and stuff like this. So some of that I think is not really aligning, but I am happy to see dispensationalism leaving like being more criticized broadly. I just hope it's done in a way that's accurate.
Fair enough. Good deal, man. Yeah, I wanted to at least give you the chance to respond to that if that's not true. So good answer. And then Pinesap, did you want to add anything there? Because I'm going to move on to questions after this, but if you wanted to add anything, you can go for it.
No, I think I don't really see that anything HHC, said there as needing kind of a response. I understand that the term dispensationalist rhetorically online is used as very much a wide swath, ranging from people who still do believe that Jews need to accept Christ to people who literally think that you can be a good Jew and go to heaven and you don't need to accept Christ. They're kind of all lumped in there, and there's a lot more nuance. As you and I are, Jordan, we are supersessionists because we do believe that every single person needs to accept Christ. So no, I don't really think there's any debate or anything like that right there. I think HHC was just kind of making the nuancial distinctions of how that term is kind of used in a wide swath, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and to be clear, I mean, like, so my family members, my parents are like super boomer, dispy evangelicals, Fox News type people, you know, and one thing that's sort of interesting is I talked to my mom about this like a year ago, and I was asking her like, do you believe like the Jews need Christ? And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, like, do you think they need to you need Christ to be saved? They need to believe in his death and resurrection. And she just like couldn't even understand the question, because she was like, of course, like this is it was so innate to her belief that she didn't even think that anybody could ever think otherwise. And she's extremely dispensationalist in a Southern Baptist church, all these things. And so that's the kind of disconnect that I was talking about. It's not that there aren't people that have some other view on that, but
they're probably more fringe than they're being made out to be.
Yeah, that's kind of my take, I guess. So anyway, I do have a lot of questions here, Jordan, for Pinesap, but can we alternate an audience and then one of mine back and forth?
Yeah, actually, I thought we had a lot more requests. They've died down. There were a lot at the beginning, so I have one right here. And then
if you don't get to them, they immediately leave because they want to talk.
Yeah, I feel bad, but people are here to hear HHC and Pinesap, not.
It's the rabble, dude. It's the chusma, dude. They just.
I understand Nick's position more and more every day towards the audience. No, I'm just kidding. I understand.
Dude, I have loved the compilations of him like rolling his eyes at the super chats. I see that as a positive. Just to be honest, like anytime I think there's pushback to people that are just really just operating as idiots on the internet, I think is a good thing. So
yeah, I understand him more and more. So I'll get to Revelator first if he's still there, and then Groip Rican, I'll get to him after that. So let's get Revelator in here. Revelator, are you there? This was a while ago, so you might not still be there. I'll give you a sec. Revelator. Negative. Okay. Let's get to Groip Rican then, and then we can go to yours, HHC.
Sweet.
All right. Groip Rican, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect, man.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, what you got, man?
Hey, so I just want to say good evening. I thought this conversation was actually really good, especially when it comes to clarifying a lot of things. But I basically just wanted to ask, probably more specifically for HHC, is when you see a compilation of clips like the show about Charlie Kirk's death, where essentially there was a monologue for about an hour, leading young men to really find Jesus and fall for the faith and really, start living Christian lives and living lives that are just Christ-based. Is that something that you would still have a problem showing people in your church? Because obviously, he's had multiple jokes and stuff like that have.
No, I thought the first 15 minutes of the program, I'm going to get some flack from this in DMs. I thought the first like 10 to 15 minutes or whatever, maybe even longer, of the program on Thursday night, and I watched the whole thing, I thought was actually excellent. So I'm not going to just like attack Nick regardless on that. I think that he has definitely said some things that I've agreed with, and some of what I do with my account is intrinsically counter-signal, and that's because I feel like some of that is necessary in these spaces, just based on what I've seen in the degree of sort of circle jerk that's been going on. But I will say that I do think that the first part of that program was really good, and I think the ending was actually pretty good too. So I may even clip it. I may even clip the beginning and just sort of give a broader endorsement of that part of it. And then no, I don't think that people at my church would have had an issue with that. It was just like the whiplash in the middle with in comparison to some of the stuff that he said at the beginning, I guess.
Okay, awesome, man. Let me get one more person in because he's been waiting, and then if that's cool, we'll jump over to your questions, HHC, if that works for you.
Sounds
awesome.
Good, man.
All right, Hereford Brimley. Let's get him in here. All right. Hereford, are you there? Hereford Brimley? Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for joining today, and what you got?
So, I want to cop to ignorance about some stuff. So this is a question. I basically got disgusted by the Groiper movement basically last year, basically just cut off my entire feed from anything mentioning Groyper. So I'm just now kind of coming back, paying attention again. So this would be mostly for Fields guy, since he's apparently close to Nick.
You can call him a Groyper. Isn't that right? You can call him a Groyper, right?
Do what?
I think you can call him a Groyper. Is that right, Pinesap?
Yeah, I'm a Groyper.
There you go.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
All right.
I don't care either way. Sure. So has there in the past year or so been a concerted effort to expel the pedos from your guys' group?
There's no pedophiles in AF. I've never interacted with a pedophile, never seen any evidence of pedophilia. You know, if you're going to believe Kiwi Farms, which is full of like, I don't know, trannies and leftists, I can't stop you, but no, I've never seen any pedophilia.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, so what got me to basically just entirely in disgust cut. I mean, I blocked everything, every variation of Groyper I could imagine from my feed, was I saw Real PDB. They were posting drawn pictures of the Groyper mascot assaulting a young naked girl.
Oh, Wife Jack?
Basically.
Yeah, was it Wife Jack?
No, it was not that. I don't think it was, because they were saying like, we're going to do this to your daughter. And she was like a 10-year-old girl at the time.
Yeah.
And so
I'm going to cut you off because I think it's pretty obvious that every movement has bad apples. And until you can show me that Nick proliferated those images and endorsed them, I don't really have much else to say. It's not running cover. I just hear that critique a lot, and it's just kind of silly, and it's not worth spending too much time on. So
well, and I even at that time did say that I don't think that the jokes that were put out by some that were of that nature were funny or what have you. You know, I'm not like a Groyper general or anything like that when I say that, but you know, many of the kind of higher, more prolific voices in the movement said that. You know, anyone can title themselves a Groyper. I mean, there's literally, you know, fake Groyper accounts on here that are run by guys like associated with like Patrick Casey and stuff like that. So, you know, this is one of the things of having a decentralized movement. Anyone can call themselves anything, and it doesn't necessarily make it the case. So that's what I'd have to say about that. Sorry, Jordan, if I interrupted. I just wanted to add on.
That's so far as that stuff does exist. I think Nick has done a pretty good job of denouncing that, saying that it's not. Jokes are one thing, but to call it, you know, there's open pedophiles and stuff is just silly. So, HHC, I'll let you if you want to add any questions for Pinesap. Now we're starting to get in more requests. So we have Jan Neruda, and then Bible Belt Nationalist, and then Burner Catholic. So those are going to be the next three that we go to, but I'll let HHC go with some questions, or a question or two he had for Pinesap from his end.
Yeah, no problem. Sure. So one thing that's kind of been a discussion in some of the more reformed Christian nationalist spaces in the last little while is the idea of like the immorality or morality of I guess like racial prejudice versus hatred versus I guess just sort of recognition of pattern behavior or whatever. And you had tweeted something out. I think it was on, let me see here, September 4th, Pinesap, where you said genuine prejudice based on someone's race is fundamentally anti-Christian. And I saw like a lot of people in your replies that were kind of disagreeing with you. I think you like replied to a few of those guys. I was just curious where you would kind of mark that line, because I think that it's ridiculous to consider it to be like some sort of sinful prejudice if you just happen to like a lot of boomers would agree with the disparity in things like crime statistics as being accurate. But where would you say like sinful racial prejudice begins from your perspective?
I don't fall for the sort of subtlety BS that a lot of people do, where they're like, oh, if that black guy's not given the job or whatever, it's because he was like racially profiled or what have you, like the DEI kind of stuff. I think a lot of that is just complete BS. I don't think it has any basis in reality. And I'll even go so far as to say it's like if your name is like Daquan or whatever, and I see a Michael Smith that has the same credentials, I'm hiring Michael Smith. Like, you know, I'm sorry, but like, why is your name Daquan? Right? It's not even a black thing. It's just like that's not even a real name, bro. I mean, Jordan is literally black, and his name's Jordan, which is a good name. You know,
I got a cosign Pinesap here. Yeah, Saint Jordan of the Saxony, Jordan River. Like, come on,
legit.
These are very normal names here. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I Pinesap would draw the line with me. I'm Pinesap's friend, so clearly there's nothing going on there. So,
right, I'm not. This is not a gotcha.
Oh no. And I didn't take it that way either. HHC.
What I am curious about, just on your example, like if somebody came in and was a Daquan and was a believer and seemed to be a very good fit for the job, would you, if you were listing pros and cons for him versus John Smith or whatever, would you put the name Daquan on the con side, or if an interaction with Daquan revealed that he was a godly man that was responsible and could do the job very well, would you just sort of completely dismiss his name being Daquan?
Is the John Smith in this example also Catholic, or is he like a secular guy?
Oh, I mean, I guess we could say. I mean, if we want to tease it out, I guess we could say John Smith is like is a secular guy.
Like
but
degenerate.
I would hire the Catholic. I would hire the Daquan guy.
Okay.
It's not an arbitrary thing.
If you were to make a pro con, even if you found out he was Catholic, would you consider his name being Daquan still on the con side of the balance, or would you just sort of dismiss it out of hand? Like, because I
dismiss it out of hand in that example, because I don't feel like it's more the example I was giving was if they were exactly the same person credential wise or work wise, I'm going to be a lot more disposed to the John Smith, right? If we have to really cut our teeth on it. But it's like, it goes without saying, if there's someone who's a faithful Catholic or whatever versus like some degenerate guy, it's like, I'm going to go with the faithful Catholic.
So if you're operating on just like the heuristics available to you, you would not dismiss that as being a heuristic to use, but you would invalidate it upon further evidence of that person's character. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Is that...
Yeah, okay. I think that's a good way to put it.
I would also push back a little bit. I think that's always the example that's used as like the honestly, that's a low stakes example because that doesn't involve, this example to use is like you're walking down an empty street at 11 p.m. in a big city and there's a group of walking towards you and there's a group. And in one example, there's a group of white frat guys walking towards you. And then in another example, there's a group of dread, twisty. I wouldn't consider it hateful or denying their humanity to say I probably would cross the street and maybe go into a Starbucks for a little bit if the latter group were walking towards me, whereas I wouldn't if the group of frat guys were walking towards me. And you can call that unfounded bias or unfounded. I wouldn't call it hatred. I would say that that's just looking out for your own safety.
Well, and Jordan, that's actually a good example because the thing is like, and I'm not trying to be the like, I'm not racist or something like that card. I hate when people play that card, but it's like, I do think a lot of black people like do dress and act in a very thuggy way. And then they're like asking, why am I being profiled? And it's like, dude, you got your pants sagging. There's holes in them. You're listening to like rap music on blast on your, crack screen iPhone. Like, I'm going to make a judgment just based off what I see. And I am going to profile you based on that. Like, if you don't want to be profiled, it's like people should literally dress like you, like nice glasses, suit. Like if I saw a black guy walking down the street wearing all that stuff, like very clean cut dude, I have walked by people like that and I didn't think anything of it. But when I see like, Daquan and he's got like a backwards baseball cap and he's like got a limp or whatever, it's like I'm crossing the street in an instant, bro.
Well, I mean, I've told Jordan this before that like if Jordan dresses well, which he does, that he has an advantage even over like most white guys, because most people are going to give a black guy in a suit some degree of larger deference just because it's a little bit less common, you know.
That's true.
That's actually 100% true. Larry David talked about that in his show in Curb Your Enthusiasm. He said that white people, they will go out of their way to hire a black guy wearing glasses. But yeah, I mean, that is actually totally real. That totally hit home, and it's Curb Your Enthusiasm, very Jewish show, just going to say, but it is a good, funny show. But, you know, at least in my personal life, I've gotten a lot of pushback from other black people where you deny that, you know, internal bias exists, because here's what happened in this video where they were, you know, denied service. I can speak for is my own personal experience, and all I know is that in 32 years on planet Earth, I have never once been told to leave a restaurant. I've never once been told, you know, we're refusing service today, sir. Like, these are things that just don't happen to normal, well-adjusted society contributors, basically. So that's clearly a them problem. And as far as like the theological angle, I don't think it's denying. I mean, in the example I used of not wanting to cross the street or crossing the street if Daquan and his crew are walking past you, I don't think that that's denying their humanity. I don't think that that's saying they can't go, because HHC, we've talked about this in person before a lot, actually. I don't think that is somehow saying that they can't, that they're not ensouled or that they can't go to heaven. That is purely I'm looking at this. So, you know what I would say on that one, at least. Revelator, yeah, I'll let,
I think we got a question guy in here.
Yeah, let me unmute. Let me bring him on. Oh wait, Revelator, you can unmute yourself, I think. Yeah, go for it, Ben. Because I tried to call you in earlier and you weren't there. So what did you want to say, Revelator? You there, man? You might, I don't know if your speaker's muted or.
Masad got him, bro.
Yeah, maybe so, man. I'll let Groip Rican, if you want to unmute, you can contribute what you have to say. And Revelator, if you get it working, then you can jump into. Groip Rican. Do I need? Nope. You're.
These are all y'all's audience. Yeah, by the way, they're not mine. My people would never do this to me.
Groip Rican, you're unmuted. You can. And Revelator also.
Sorry, can you guys hear me okay now?
Yeah, there you go, man.
Yes, there you go.
I thought microphone issues. You had me scared. I thought I was being total boomer tech here. So yeah, go for it, man.
No. It's I'm 26, so I'm a boomer too. I guess you. No, but what's it called? Yeah, no. On that same note, I'd say, like, obviously my name's Groip Rican on here. But I think it's a very, very touchy subject for a lot of people nowadays to even speak upon race, especially when it comes to Christian circles, because, you know, there's a lot of times where noticing certain habits and cultural differences are sometimes just kind of tossed under the rug and like, oh, let's just be blind because of the gospel. But I mean, you look at the missionaries who did work in Africa and untouched tribes and, you know, Polynesian islands and stuff like that, and they died because of the cultural differences. And, you know, there's very strong historical, you know, lists of moments in which, you know, cultural differences have made big impacts on interactions between people, besides just modern day, you know, just the way society works, especially in this country where we're all put together. So, I mean, I think that, like, sometimes it's uncomfortable for people who aren't, quote unquote, people of color or whatever, you know, that freaking means. But, like, as a Puerto Rican, I say it to my wife very often. I'm like, I really dislike the way Puerto Rican people act. You know, I see it happen all the time where I live, and just, you know, obviously I think at the end of the day, Christ is for everyone who opens their heart to him. But at the same time, it's like, it's kind of funny that in some sense people are still not allowed to kind of point out the fact that certain things are undesirable in a homogenous society, whether that be, the way that you act in public and stuff like that. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, and I think that's a great point, brother. And what I think's asinine is, the way at least the civil rights movement was sold to us with a bag of chips when we were a kid was, you just had these black people almost arbitrarily being judged just on the color of their skin. And I think most people, if there was a great guy who just happened to be black and, someone was coming up to him and saying, hey, Blackie, I don't like you or something like that. I think most people would be like, yeah, that's retarded, dude. Why are you doing that? But in actuality, what's happening now is these groups, we see these general trends amongst these certain groups that are acting bad. And it's like, we're just supposed to adopt this like suicidal altruism of like, oh, we can't say anything because that's mean. It's like, well, I'd rather say something and be mean than not say something and be dead. So, it's like when there's an actual like kind of arbitrary case of someone being mistreated on the color of their skin, I'm the first to speak out against it. But it's like, if you got like Puerto Ricans or whatever engaging in crime or something, I'm not going to hold my tongue if I see it happening.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, I totally agree, and I don't comes in. It's really what we're talking about is like blind hatred,
right?
That's where the sin would come in. That's kind of the line I draw is is it just this blind hatred and this denying of people's humanity? Okay, that's one thing, but acknowledging behaviors and not blaming disparities on society or internalized racism is obviously not sinful.
Yeah, and I would even say that, like, I mean, you say blind hatred. I would say that hatred generally towards individuals.
Yeah,
that's
a fair point. That's a fair point. I mean, I don't. I hate the behavior of my brethren, but I don't hate anyone. I don't want anyone to go to hell, or don't think that people can't obtain salvation. I think certain factors make that harder for others, but I don't think that it that there's any hatred there. I agree with you. I think that that's an important, because hatred would still be sinful.
Yeah, I think what is difficult is ascertaining, because I do think there are a lot of people that would echo what has been said in the last like 10 minutes in a way that is authentic and accurate. The issue is sort of determining on an individual basis for people that how real that is or not. So for instance, I made a tweet about this, like, I guess like over a year ago, where I was like, if some guy occasionally in political conversations brings up 13 does 50 when it's relevant and applicable and expresses it in a way that that represents like a rhetorical point that they're making, I don't think that person is like, oh, like heretic. But if he sends you memes every 12 hours about it and is constantly denigrating people who are black on the basis of them being black, then I have to question it, even if that person says, okay, like the exact same thing we've said the last 10 minutes. Right. And that's sort of the line that's a lot more difficult to.
But in that example,
determine.
aren't they intrinsically not espousing those beliefs just because they're black? I mean, I think that it's a little off-putting.
Well, to be fair, I don't mean like they're espousing those beliefs because they like have an issue with melanin. I mean intrinsically in the sense, or just because they're black in the sense that they hate that like people who are black broadly, right? I don't think anybody hates people like black people because of their melanin.
Right.
But I do think that there are people that hate people who happen to be black on the basis of these broader behavioral things that they've seen. And they would say, like we have said the last 10 minutes about this, while exhibiting in their behavior that they do just hate black people. Right. I mean, and I've encountered people like this. I think we'd be lying if we didn't say that. I've got people in my DMs that would say that would kind of follow along what I'm describing too.
Yeah, I just think it's a pretty small, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about what's festering under the surface. I think it's a pretty small group of people that are falling into that sinful.
I don't think society-wide it's large at all.
Right. It's overrepresented in these spheres, but
right.
Yeah. We can probably put a bookmark in that top. If we want to come back to it, we can. But I think.
Oh yeah.
I think we kind of.
I want to talk to. I have a question for Pinesap that's unrelated to this. Can I ask Pinesap about something?
Yeah, let's go.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So.
Sorry,
I know that somebody mentioned
one thing really quick. I'm going to get to Burner Catholic and Bible Belt Nationalist after this part. So don't take your hand down, guys. I'll get to you.
Cool.
And Revelator. I
know somebody mentioned,
but sorry, keep going. HHC. Sorry.
Pinesap mentioned like Patrick Casey earlier, and that kind of like brought my mind back around this. Is one of the questions that I had jotted down over the last couple of days when I was thinking about this coming up. Is white nationalism sort of the morality of that broadly in a Christian ethos, right? So what would be like I've heard Nick say certain things about this, about the was it 1965 Immigration Act? When's Hart-Celler?
Yeah, Hart-Celler was 65. Yeah.
65. Okay. I know that you and I and Jordan have talked about this too, but do you believe, like Pinesap, I guess, what would be your ideal immigration policy? Like, are you an ethno-nationalist? Would you be in favor of like a mass deportation on the basis of race? What's your sort of ideal?
I think by and large, what needs to happen is first and foremost, we just need to shut off the tap and have a complete immigration moratorium. And then I think within that, we need the immediate removal of everyone in this country who's illegal. I think that just goes without saying. It's like, if you border jumped, border hopped, or what have you, it's like, clearly that's the easiest example of someone to look at and say, you don't belong in this country.
Agreed.
And then I
would even say that the children of those people, I think dreamers, I would deport as well.
Yeah, I would agree.
So we agree on that. I guess what I'm asking is past that, because that is really the distinction that's coming up. Because even guys like Charlie Kirk, may he rest in peace, was leaning toward immigration moratorium, and that's kind of been the cultural movement. And I'm glad for that, because I've been advocating for that for a long time, like total freezing of everything everywhere. But if that's established, and say we do get rid of all the illegals, what is your opinion on ethno-nationalism?
Well, I think that this country historically has had a white supermajority. I don't think that it has been all white, but I think it has had always that white supermajority, and that needs to be preserved. And I think there's a couple different ways to do it. I think we need pronatal policies for white people. I do think that we need to, shut down, even restrict what people call free speech, things like pornography and all that are impacting the white birth rate. I think that we need to make it easier for single income households to live and thrive. And I would say that would kind of include decentivizing women working, because really it should only be, I think, men working. And then I think on top of that, broadly on the race question, people who have been in this country historically, like I know there's Hispanics in the American Southwest that have been here for generations, going from the Mexican-American War, what have you, Black people in the South, broadly speaking, I'm kind of lumping people in these areas, but that's the demographic displacement. I think they have a place in this country. But I think that, like, for instance, the people that Ronald Reagan granted like amnesty to or whatever, or I don't know if you'd call that amnesty, but whatever he did, I'm not sure the exact. It was amnesty. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Amnesty, they need to be sent back. They're not American. They don't belong here. I think too that in the future, if there is immigration at all, which I really almost think we're full at this point, there just shouldn't be at all. But even if there was, it does need to be from the white European world. And it's not because I think that people who are not white are like evil or something like that. But I think when you introduce a element of a group of people that is different enough from the majority, it does create ethnic tension. It actually does create, racial hatred, and it does create balkanization and a lack of integration that leads to things like violence. And I think it would be, what's funny is people would call me a racist for saying that, but it's like, I'm literally just, it's like negating something, like just something not happening, right? Rather than going out and saying, oh, I'm going to your country and I'm doing something to you. It's like, I'm just saying you shouldn't be allowed in my house. And I think that's perfectly okay for us to advocate and say that. And so I think that broadly would be my ultimate kind of vision for this country kind of going down the future. And it's not because, you know, non-white people or whatever are evil or what have you, but I think that by and large, I think most countries need to live with either exclusively the race that they're based on, or if they were always kind of a multiracial country, the super majority that made that country. Like, when it comes to Europe, I am an ethno-nationalist. I don't think that if you are not white, you are not European. I don't care if you understand their constitution. I don't care if you understand European history. You will never be European. It's like a trans person pretending to be a woman. And I think that's okay to say because Europe is white. To be European is to be white. America was that white supermajority, but there were other races in there, and so I wouldn't advocate for an ethno state in the proper sense of the word.
So
the only thing I would add on top of that really quick is that in that same vein of Pinesap, like you said, negating something rather than actively putting things on people, I would say that on top of that, because what HHC is asking, I think, is, and you answered it, Pinesap, but he's asking like, okay, let's say you shut off the spigot of immigration, you repeal Hart-Celler, you deport all the illegals. What next, basically? What you need next also, though, is free. Well, hold on one sec. The only thing I would add is absolute freedom of association.
I agree.
Because what you have right now, immigration problem, you have the fact that it's enshrined into law that you have to have Section 8 housing in your neighborhood. You have to, under penalty of law, you have to serve people that you know, like we were talking about earlier. You have to serve Daquan, even if you know he's going to have some level of diversity in this country, which I think is kind of baked into the cake, like Nick has talked about. You do have to have absolute freedom of association and give people the right to not associate based on any characteristics they see fit, whether it's in housing, whether it is in the service industry, whatever it may be. You have to explicitly notate that right of people to not be forced under penalty of law to integrate, and that's what's really been eroded with the Civil Rights Act. So the only caveat I would add to that.
So two things real quick to I guess to point out as questions. You bring, I mean, Jordan just mentioned the Hart-Celler repeal thing, and then Pinesap, you mentioned like Reagan amnesty. So with Reagan amnesty and I guess Hart-Celler, like when you say repeal Hart-Celler, Jordan, are you talking about like everybody that came through the Hart-Celler Act would be deported? Or
I mean,
what are you? You're saying we just change the standard to an immigration moratorium?
Exactly, because
for new people entering.
Yeah, I mean, what the change was with Hart-Celler was that it prioritized third world immigration. So, I mean, if we're talking about repealing Hart-Celler, I guess that goes hand in hand with a complete immigration moratorium.
Okay, so I would agree with the moratorium. What I wouldn't align with would be, and I think you said this, Pinesap, but you can clarify if I don't want to misrepresent you, was that you would want to deport people that came through the Reagan amnesty. Is that accurate?
I think a better means of kind of moving people around would actually be like the remigration programs that many on the right have advocated for, where it's an ethical means of population sort of dispersion or leading people kind of back to their native lands. You know, you can give people kind of a stipend to go back to where they were originally from and create kind of an economic incentive for them to go back there so that hopefully maybe even then they can improve those countries they're originally from and we can just have a better world. But I think that kind of remigration program of like offering maybe someone a stipend or what have you would be more for what I'm looking for. And I think if there are people under that Amnesty Act that and those would be for the decent people under that Amnesty Act that ultimately at the end of the day, I think are good people, just, ultimately in the wrong place. But I think for those like what we saw in the LA riots that wave the Mexican flag and they're like, I'm Mexican, Viva la Raza. I would say even if they're under that act, that is an act of sedition against the United States. They should be deported and their asses should be shipped back to whatever country they're originally from, because they made it clear they don't want to be American.
So broad legislation, including deport or exile, I guess would be more, I guess we could call it exile based on like broad denouncement of the United States as a nation, you would be in favor of. But people that were given amnesty by Reagan would not be forced to leave. They wouldn't be deported. They would just be offered the opportunity to with cash payments.
I think that would be
not leave. They can remain. Right.
I think that would be the working plan I have in my head. I know that there are people like Nick who are much better versed on the actual policy and how that could look in an ethical framework. But I think that would be the most ethical framework because, I'm not looking to, I want to make it clear. I'm not looking to just, rip innocent people out of their houses or anything like that. That's not what I believe. But I do think for everyone's interest, ultimately, we can't have this sort of multiculturalism and even to a certain extent, this forced multiracialism that we've seen going on, because it is going to lead to race riots. It is going to lead to a race war. It is going to lead to actual racial hatred. And it's funny because even though people would call me a racist for saying that, if anything, I'm the least racist. It's like, I want everyone to live and thrive in their own lands. I want everyone, like, I want, a state like Mexico to be stable and good and people love being there, who are native to that place. I want, even a place like Africa, which I know people will roll my eyes when I say this, but like, I want them to thrive. I want them to do well. But I think we can all do that in the lands and the countries we are really, broadly speaking, originally from. And I think when we are forcing integration on again, this like kind of misplaced altruism, it's going to lead to a lot more violence and bloodshed.
So one of my, I guess what I've been thinking about a lot lately would be really applying biblical righteousness to the state. And one of those things I would consider would be, and you did just affirm this, so this is not at you, but I don't think the state should be harming people that could be like accurately defined as innocent when talking about just laws, right?
Right.
And so people that were given amnesty through Reagan that have not gone out and renounced their citizenship by being La Razan, LA riot people or whatever. I don't think that those people should be forcibly deported. What I'm not sure of in terms of the practicality, or what I'm very skeptical of in terms of practicality, would be the idea that giving cash settlements or something, or cash payments for those people to leave, would be ever successful at any kind of broad scale. And I mean, maybe it would, and I'm totally wrong. It just seems like the people that I know that like would have did receive amnesty through Reagan, you would have to give them an unbelievable amount of money to leave the United States to go to Mexico, given the disparity in the living standards and for how many generations they've been here. So I'm with you in terms of the moratorium. And I even believe that if we are to have immigration, we should have a system where we have multi-generational, essentially probation for criminality, so that if your kids commit violent crimes, even if they were born here, they're more like they can be deported.
I think that's a good idea
for one generation down the line. I think that's fair, and I think there's some biblical precedent for some of this to a degree. We can get into that maybe, but
even in terms of practicality,
I have an issue with.
Sorry,
Jordan. What's that?
I was just going to say. You go.
Okay. Well, now I lost my train of thought, Jordan. So you can go ahead.
Okay, my bad. There's a slight delay, so when I say you can go, you've already said I can go. So anyway,
no, you're good. I'm using Bluetooth headphones, so it adds like a quarter second. So,
gotcha. Yeah, I was just gonna say, in terms of practicality, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I mean, if we're just being honest, there's somewhere in the ballpark of 20 and 40 million illegals here, in terms of practicality, we're not deporting all of them. So I think that in terms of what's practical, that's why I'm really big on the freedom of association and the repealing of the Civil Rights Act, because that is actually a practical step that could lead to some form of self-determinism. There's kind of what Arvol is doing right now. There are interesting things happening, and if people want to live in an all-white city, I think that's their human right.
Do y'all think that would improve race relations, though? That's another thing that I'm pretty skeptical of.
It may not improve racial relations, but it would absolutely improve the lives of the people that are subjected to diversity on a daily basis.
Yes. I mean, this is an anecdotal example, right? So, take it with a grain of salt, but like even being in like the Italian part of St. Louis, I felt like there was a lot more love and care put into each part of that city in that particular location than, like when I go to Denver and it's like in the heart of Denver, there is just like total trash, total crime. Nobody wants to be there. Nobody has anything that kind of like unites them in any kind of commonality. And it creates this weird feeling of kind of like why America that I think if we did have a homogenous city wouldn't exist.
Yeah, I'm just not convinced, I guess, if we were to repeal the Civil Rights Act, that it would improve the lives of a lot of people. I don't know. I really think it would just make racial animosity explode and maybe even result in some like wild balkanization.
Well, I think those are two different things.
I'm not saying even that I am not in favor of on a fundamental level freedom of association. I even have some like residual libertarian tendencies that kind of lean that direction as well. I'm Texan, so what can I say?
Real.
But at the same time, yeah, real. At the same time, some of these things just feel like pipe dreams beyond, like, it's like, man, like, deport the illegals. We need to set up a total moratorium. That just seems like what needs to happen. And I see a lot of attention and focus on some of these other things that really, in my mind, don't do a lot other than harm a very like pro-America movement, right? Like, a lot of my normie con friends can totally get on board when I explain immigration moratorium and as well as deporting all the illegals. Like that's like very broadly something that a lot of the right can agree on. But then we say, okay, well, I think it'll improve race relations if we get rid of the Civil Rights Act. I think a lot of them, and I would agree with them, would say that I don't think that's going to actually improve race relations. I think that's going to make things go pretty crazy.
I mean, but if your goal is to improve race relations, your average black person would say, and if you ask your average black person, okay, what do you think we should do to improve race relations? They would say, you should give me $1 million. So like
well, I'm not talking. I mean, listen, I wouldn't listen to those people.
I know what you're saying, but I'm saying if your goal is just like racial harmony, I think that is already that is a. Is this idea of we're going to have racial harmony. I think at this point the goal should just be fixing the mess that we created and make our cities livable again. And I think you solve that by allowing freedom of association. And with the Civil Rights Act stuff sounds like, well, what would that even do? Well, that would make the cities livable again. That would make the suburbs livable again, because you wouldn't have Section 8 housing plopped by law in the middle of a suburb that never asked for it. You wouldn't have.
Wouldn't it not validate? Sorry, JB, you're cutting in and out. So sometimes I think you stopped talking when you didn't. Wouldn't it? Would that not validate what we talked about in the minds of leftists? I guess it was like 30, 45 minutes ago about prejudice versus what was it? Like the black people say that, like, okay, I didn't get the job because I was black or whatever, right? Like, doesn't that do nothing but validate that perspective in their mind, like in half of the country's mind? Because now you could do that legally. So in my mind, all that would do would just validate their opinion on that, make them more staunch, and then just like sort of tear the country apart, right? Yeah, I'm not saying that if I could rewind time that I would have been in favor of the Civil Rights Act. I think there's like a pretty good case to be made against that. I just like in the year of our Lord 2025, it's hard to imagine that wouldn't just be a travesty to do on scale. But
in the same way you said that you wouldn't listen to black people who say they want $1 million, I don't listen to any leftists who say that, you know, they didn't get the job because they were the wrong color. Like, I'm saying that there's no appeasing these people regardless, so we just need to fix the mess.
A third of 10% of the country, which is really mad and also committing all the crimes, or a lot of the crimes, in these major cities, is a little different than like empowering half the country and validating their views of race in terms of like their already existing prejudice against whites on that level. I don't know. Anyway, well, I think we can I think we can line on some of the earlier stuff like we talked about, but anyway.
Yeah, some of the more practical stuff like immigration moratorium. I mean, that's the stuff that's really gaining traction.
That's never been more achievable than right now, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
Totally. I mean, some of the H-1B stuff, especially like in the reaction we've all seen to that, you know, you could completely stop it. And that's one thing. I really think, like, I try to have a very longer, like a much more intergenerational perspective on these things. And I really think that in this country, if we could stop immigration with to complete net zero for 100 years through a constitutional amendment, I really think that like on the other end of that 100 years, my great grandchildren would be in a much more harmonious country. Even if we weren't able to achieve deporting all the illegals, which I think we should, I really think that could happen. That's not a popular take because it doesn't solve it now, right? But I think like being able to achieve a degree of functionality in your country, I do think takes a long time. And I do think assimilation is possible over many generations. That's one thing we may disagree on. But
yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. You can just look at the Italians, the Irish. Yeah, I think it's definitely possible with certain groups. I'm just very skeptical of the degree to which, let's say we achieve the deportations or the immigration moratorium, you still do fundamentally have the black problem. Like, that's still there, and it's not immigration. I mean, it is partially, but really when you're talking about our cities not being livable, you're talking about black crime. And there's nothing with immigration that solves that problem. What solves that problem is getting into kind of the meat of disparate impact theory, freedom of association, Section 8 housing. Like, that kind of stuff is what's making the cities like St. Louis unlivable, and Memphis, and a lot of these things. So I'm agreed to which solving the immigration question solves things like the crime problem and our cities and stuff. So that's what I would say. But I do agree with you about the immigration part. I did want to go to Revelator. He's had his hand up for a while, and we've just kind of been going on this topic for a minute. So, Revelator, if you want to jump in and speak your piece, I'll leave you on as a speaker because I know you and stuff. So, yeah, man. What you got?
Thank you, Jordan. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
All right. So sorry about the technical issues, but finally, just to say thank you both for having this, and and all this, and just the first thing, Hitler Hated Christ, HAC. So, nice to see you. I never thought I'd actually be talking to you directly, but I will say, if you could ever unblock me, I would appreciate that.
Why did I block you? Do you remember why I blocked you?
I remember we had beef a little. I think I remember I was specifically like the issue that you had with Pinesap about Jews and the Catholicism. I would speak on that, and I guess that was the reason you blocked me. It was a while ago.
I unblocked you just now. I will say that I've had a policy for quite a while that I only block people that that like either shared my docs or said something related to it in some of these circles.
Oh, so, of course not. I never know. No.
If you didn't, then you might have gotten caught in a broader thing, but I just unblocked you. So
never. But just to say, I did want to talk a bit about what you guys were talking about with the whole black problem, right? Just to be honest, yeah, I'm African, right? My family comes from Nigeria, but I've been born in America all my life personally, and what Jordan is saying about the black problem and what you guys were saying, about how versus like Daquan, someone with a name like Daquan wouldn't get the job, but someone like John Smith would get the job, right? Oh no. I'm African. I don't have a name like that at all.
No, actually, Revelatore's name is John Smith. We didn't realize that,
Wow.
but he was the other guy I was talking about.
Post 23, post 23 in me right now. Do it.
I'm 100% Black African. I can probably say that with certainty. I've never done a DNA test
in the background. Yeah, let's go.
Oh my goodness.
Here's the thing. We was kings, but I'm looking at a king right now. Okay, I'm just saying.
Okay, all right.
Oh my God.
All right.
But the thing is, though, I'll just say, right, as someone who has, I personally have lived a very sheltered life, but going to college and talking to different Black people, right, even the most like ardent Black Christians, right, where you say that, like they do have a racial animosity for white people, and people just don't talk about that enough. Whether they're Black American, they're African, they all have like a certain either just dismissal or just a hatred, like a hatred for white people in particular. And I've known it all my life, and seeing all the stuff happening with Charlie Kirk in particular, man, it's really started to radicalize me more and more. And I just feel like that most Black people just don't have any hope. I honestly am at that point because it's just like, it's literally almost all of them who are saying stuff like this.
Is your dad Nigerian?
Yeah. My dad, I will say my dad is a basic bitch conservative, right? Basic bitch conservative. And
is he like those people are not like our people? Like what is
he doesn't have an accent or anything like that. He's actually that's the thing. It's like I would say I'm very rare. Like I don't have an accent. I would say I'm actually very assimilated, right? But I understand that I don't represent. I know I'm like 1 in 1 million, right? So I would never pretend like, I represent, Blacks or even Africans at all. Like I'm not like them. I'm like Jordan B in that, I understand the Black problem.
You wouldn't take the deportation money, would you?
Well, I just was going to say. Oh, what about the? Oh, never mind. Sorry. So, you go ahead, HHC.
I was just joking. I asked him if he would take the deportation money, but anyway.
It's a little complicated, right? So, okay, I'll just first say this, right? Yes, I've been born here all my life, but I would never dare say that, like, I'm more American than, like, Pinesap or, like, Nick, right? My family, I've only been here, like, I think I'm first generation, and I do see myself as American to a degree, but I understand that, like, I would never go over here and dictate and say, oh, you think America's for white people? How dare you, you racist piece of shit? It's like, I mean, they have every right to believe that. And even the founders said similar stuff. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, I just came here off the boat 20 or 30 years ago. Oh, that means I'm just as or not more American than you. It's like, that's absurd. But most Africans, most immigrants think like this. And they dead ass really think that because they have a passport that they're just as American as you. Like look at someone like Vivek. Like he genuinely believes that. And to me, that's just shameless. It's completely shameless. But
and it's not to say like in Revelatore's case, like there couldn't be like minor exceptions to the general rule of like those people need to go back. Like you're a great guy. Like I would be sad if you weren't in here in America with us, right? I even have there's even a girl I'm sweet on and I'm talking to right now that, technically I guess she immigrated here legally or what have you, but like, and she's Catholic or whatever, but like, or not whatever, she's Catholic, but I think we're talking about like larger trends, right?
Yeah,
like larger swaths of people when it's like we see like the LA riots and it's like
of course.
Viva La Raza, I'm Mexican, I hate America. I like they both want to be in legit. It's like they both want to be in this country, but they also hate it too. 100%. And it's like these people, these freaks who like just see like my nation as basically like a Halloween treat basket with like 2 large Hershey's chocolate bars. It's like, I do want you to get out of my country. Like you don't see yourself as a part of it.
And the thing is, though, you say it's just those freaks. It's like, it's not even just the freaks. I'd say it's the vast majority. I'd say it's like legit, the vast majority of people, even the ones who won't say it to your face, they do believe this, and even the quote unquote good ones. And it's just like for example, I see people like and for black people in particular, anytime you talk about the black crime issue, they'll always yell and say, "Oh, well, white people do this too," and it's very
the Bryson Gray argument.
Oh my God, yeah, he's another guy who blocked me, bro. And like I'm.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah.
No, sorry.
Oh, no, and I see people like people like Bryce and people like Candace, right? And it's just
Dude, you don't understand. Like, you're going up against Bryson Gray. He never sins, dude. That's what the Bible says. I mean, okay. Here's the thing. That's what the parts of the Bible said that wasn't corrupted by St. Paul say, dude. Yeah. So, I mean, you're going up against the world's
anti-Pauline. Is he anti-Pauline?
He literally is anti-Pauline, bro. It's crazy.
It's retarded black Protestantism, bro. Like, you cannot win against it, bro. There's like people like there's multiple people who have that same strain. Young Don. I remember, you might not know him, but he's an example of someone with that retarded Protestantism. It's a very unique black Protestantism. It's like white people don't do it. It's very uniquely for blacks, and it really writes with the fucking law. Sorry for the language, but they do this all the time, and it's just like I don't hate him because I like Nick and Nick likes Bryson, but it's like it's always just the horrible arguments and. This like genuine, like he takes everything you say, like you'll be in a debate and then you'll say he said this and like, maybe I didn't. It's like, oh, he takes everything you say the absolute worst way possible. And how am I supposed to have a conversation with someone like that? I can't. It's honestly quite sad. It really is. I he blocked me, and this whatever. But hey, that's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, Revelator, I'll leave you on as a speaker, but
thank you. I'm sorry, can I say one more thing? I actually remember, I'm sorry, I was rambling, but for HHC, I did want to talk a little bit about when you were saying that with Pinesap, and then you were saying that when he was arguing that Jewish people do, browbeat, Christians, particularly Catholics, with the Holocaust. And then your thing was more that, I've never experienced it personally. I'm not trying to be mean. I just feel like you were coming from a place of ignorance a little bit because it's like, I've been a Groyper since 2018. And I've seen myself, many of like Jewish people say like Adam King or, Rabbi Shmuley or so many different characters of people who will specifically, they will, use the Holocaust as a bludgeon to, crap on Christians or particularly Catholics.
Right.
And, and Adam King and
I mean, like I again, this is anecdotal, take it with a grain of salt, but like I'm doxxed so people know where I went. But like when I was at the University of Denver for my degree and stuff like that, I actually did get along with quite a bit of Jewish people. But like when I became Catholic, like a lot of them saw that in an extremely negative light, and I would even say were quite bigoted towards me, like quite hateful. And I had never said anything nasty to them. I didn't go up to them, and I always treated them with complete dignity and respect. And it was like weird. It was like flipping on this like switch. I mean, it literally reminded me of like the gnashing of teeth that the Pharisees did towards our Lord Jesus Christ. But go ahead, HHC.
I was just going to say, like, and I can't mean on an interpersonal level, it's like these are all so impossible to extrapolate into a much larger context. But I feel like my experience as a Christian in the U.S. is broadly pretty representative of believers. Just thinking in terms of like, I grew up in the Southern Baptist Convention, which is pretty massive. The majority of Christians in America are Protestant, this kind of thing. So when I'm talking about that, I'm thinking more so my experience in what I consider to be a pretty broad context of Christianity, not like what Groypers see, because I don't think your average American is encountering Rabbi Shmuley, like God forbid. But what you're saying, Pinesap, I mean that's an interesting anecdote. I haven't experienced anything that like that specifically. That's kind of why it's difficult to determine, and why we don't want to be like we just critiqued about Black people claiming different discriminatory whatever, and on you know, my cousin said this or I said this. It's like, just looking at the broad base of who's writing these articles, I'm seeing it as a much larger trend of like these like r/atheism Reddit tier apostatized secularists, much, and within that does include a strain of Jews, and I would say that Jews are overrepresented in that, like they are in virtually everything. But I wouldn't say it's
not
a controlling impetus. That's where I would disagree. Is like, I don't think it's a controlling impetus. I think it's a much broader secular hatred of Christianity, and it's just a tool in the tool belt. And obviously Jews are overrepresented in that, but I disagree a bit of being controlling.
But I think that you are. Oh, go ahead.
What I would say is there's a reason that tool fell in the tool belt, right? And that's why they gave the example of the case of Galileo and the Enlightenment. You know, atheists today, you know, Voltaire and Jean-Jacques Rousseau and all those men are long dead. But what is carried today, even with a Dawkins or a Christopher Hitchens or any of the four horsemen of atheism and the new atheist movement of like 2008, you see, is this revival of their apologetics towards Christianity, which is bringing up the case of Galileo because of the Enlightenment. And I think in a similar way, the Holocaust follows a similar tract, where even though you have a lot of non-Jews who are bringing it up as an attack against the Catholic Church, it's because that, I use again that word impetus, that impetus does come from Jews, as even evidenced by, you know, when I brought up the chief Ashkenazi rabbi of Israel, both protesting the pontificate of St. John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI. And even in my missionary work, I've probably interacted with like 10 Jews online. I mean, for a guy who, you know, the secular media said I'm a, you know, rabid anti-Semite or whatever, I do tend to really love and console and consult a lot of, you know, Hebrew Catholics, a lot of people converting from a Jewish background to the Catholic faith. And every single one of them has told me that they've been shamed, denigrated, hated. There's entire like sections of their family that won't talk to them specifically because they're becoming Catholic. Right. They could literally be a Buddhist, they could be a Hindu, they could be a Satanist, but because they're accepting Christ and specifically his church, there is this special animosity that Jews have towards his church.
So would you consider that to be, sorry, real quick, would you consider that to be elevated among your average secularist household if their child converts to Catholicism? Because like I can absolutely think of situations where people's parents have been like very upset about, they raised their kid, you know, not in any faith, and then their kid became some like crazy Christian. Right. I mean, well, and like you mentioned the whole four horsemen too. And it's like, I think two of those guys have like their mom was Jewish. Then I think that makes them ethnically. And I think only Sam Harris ever had anything practicing as a growing up. But I mean, go ahead.
Well, you know, trying to deny that influence is kind of denying the undeniable.
I don't deny the influence, and especially it's not a controlling. Like, I don't think it's the primary impetus of secularism. Like, that's what I said earlier.
But I think here we have to understand that the moral force of using the Holocaust as a bludgeon against the Catholic Church did primarily come from Jews. And that those same secularists, even if they're, you know, never talked to a Jew in their entire life, they see it in the toolbox because someone else placed it there. I mean, you know, I come from a background. You know, my background is WASP, right? I came from a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant background, you know, old money, people who, you know, yeah, I know. And, you know, I came from that Episcopal background, and, you know, even in the quarters of that background, you know, surprisingly for people who literally hold like gay pride liturgies, they fucking hate Catholics, dude. Like they do not, and not my immediate family or even my extended family. My immediate family and my extended family were super supportive and kind and loving to me becoming Catholic, but I could feel this animosity from other sections of the Episcopalian and Anglican world because of the influence of like the Black legends and the sort of Henrician hatred of, you know, kind of like Catholics need not apply. They're coming, the Irish and Italians are coming over here in boats and they're taking all our jobs. It's like for a group of people that literally like have like trans liturgies, it's like that hatred has not died with them. And so from my background, I can understand where that hatred came from in an Episcopalian context. And I think I see the same thing with Jews. It's not that, these Jewish parents or whatever that are objecting to their kids accepting Christ are, getting telegraphed passages from the Talmud, but they do come from a cultural milieu and background that was fully inundated with what E. Michael Jones would call the tyranny of the rabbi, where the rabbi, essentially for years and years had said to be Jewish ultimately in a very real way is to not accept Christ, because that's why even Jews view Muslims less disdainful than they do even Christians, right? Muslims, in their view, are still monotheistic, right? Because they don't confess the Holy Trinity. But Christians are seen as worse, and that because we confess the Holy Trinity, which is still monotheistic, but in their view, it's not. And that's why Myotomes was much more willing to work with like Saladin as his physician than he was when he was like writing his different epistles to give any quarter to a Jew who works with a Christian.
Yeah, and a big thing is I feel like the thing with Jews, it's very similar to blacks. It's like, it's a big thing with racism, where it's like, why do you think that, for example, whenever people think of racism, they think of like the KKK or like the Aryan Brotherhood? It's always a white racist. Why is it not a black racist? When you look at the stats, who's far more who's the least racist group? White people. Who are probably the most racist people? I personally say it's blacks or Jews. But I think Jews number one in that sense. And when I mean racist, as in, yeah, but in that sense, as in they're very, very discriminatory. And when you actually really hang out with black people and you really hear what they have to say about white people, it will really shock you. And it's a similar thing.
I don't disagree with you on that, on the black thing. I would just say, like, if we were to apply some degree of those same stats to the Jews thing, you would probably end up in the Jews would probably be more than the white people in terms of accepting of other racial groups and things like that.
Well, they're not accepting in their own place. They're only accepting
in those same pollings like you're talking about. But I understand what you're saying. I think we still have a breakdown a little bit between the whole like idea of it being a factor versus the primary impetus behind it. Maybe we need to have probably a longer, more in-depth conversation where we both look into some stuff and come back if you want, Pinesap, about like if the roots of secularism are Jewish. I think
secularism at broad, or the issue of the Holocaust being used as a bludgeon.
Well, I would say at broad. I wouldn't be surprised in terms of the Holocaust merely because it makes sense that Jews would definitely gravitate to that more than your average secular person. But I don't believe that that secularism broadly is like at root Jewish. And I think that the people that are really using it as a bludgeon, I would say that like a very large percentage, if not a majority of them, just based on looking through articles and stuff, are not Jews. They're r/Reddit or r/atheism type guys.
Well, anyway. when it comes to secularism, I would nuance it a bit, because I wouldn't say that behind every secular effort was a Jewish person, but I would say, similar to the study that was done, I think this was either from Princeton University Press or another one of these publishing houses that I'll sometimes read their books or buy their books. There's a famous book called Jews and the Protestant Reformation, and Jews, while they were not directly always involved in the Protestant Reformation, they weren't Martin Luther, they weren't John Calvin, they did celebrate it and they did encourage it as a means of destabilizing the Sicut Judaeus non of the Catholic Church, right? Where, the church wasn't persecuting Jews, but it neither allowed Jews to hold the whipping hand and political power over Catholics, over Christians. And I'd say the same thing about secularism. I don't think, like the four horsemen of atheism, I don't think any four of those guys are Jewish by any means. But I think that
the two of them are ethnically, or
Oh, I guess two of them are. Yeah, sorry, I forgot the early life of some of them. It's been a while. Excuse my ignorance. But I think that there is still a celebration on the part of Jews in promoting secularism when it affects Catholicism at large, right? And so I guess to sum that up or make that easier to understand, no, I don't think that all secularism is the creation of like a Jewish person or what have you, right? But I do think that there is undoubtedly that Jewish influence in trying to push secularism or trying to encourage it contra having a Christian culture or a Catholic culture.
And I agree, because it's like with porn, right? So many of these ills of society where it existed before even Jewish people, like pornography,
right,
all this stuff, but who made it so that it's literally ubiquitous that anyone with a phone and an internet connection can see the most just degenerate, disgusting stuff in human history? It's primarily Jews. Adam Goldstein specifically said, I pushed porn because I hated Christ.
I hated the Catholic Church.
Hated the Catholic Church in particular.
Do you think it's...
Yeah, specifically.
Do you think it's on a genetic basis they do that? Or do you think it's because by looking for Jews, you are selecting for a population that has a very high percentage of secular people, and therefore you're getting that result?
No, so I actually do disagree with the Kevin McDonald thesis that this is a genetic thing. I don't think it has anything to do with genes. While I do think that every race does have certain predispositions or what have you, and I don't think that Jews don't have any predispositions to say that. Oh, what's up?
They have a genetic disposition to schizophrenia. I think I remember seeing something like that.
Yes, that's true. Ashkenazi people do have a special predisposition to schizophrenia, like how Hungarian people have this like very rare disease that kind of solely seems to kind of affect their lineage. I think Kevin McDonald, my problem with his thesis is he tries to take a genetic predisposition and then derive a moral conclusion from it, as if God made an entire subsection of the human family that is just automatically evil. And that's a thesis that as a Catholic, I completely reject. I think
good that we align on that, because I actually have seen more and more of that. I mean, I interact with a lot of people that sort of assert that pretty often.
I've always been against it. You know, while I do think his views on race at large are cringe, I do really appreciate E. Michael Jones always saying this is a theological issue. This goes back to the cross. And that is my view too. I think the thing with Jews is when we look at salvation history, and you can read multiple great books on this. I mean, Jewish Revolutionary Spirit goes without saying, that's a fantastic text. It's the best on it. But then even smaller books like Black Legends in the Light of the World by Dr. John Rao, we see this interplay where because of Jews' background in being not of Christ, not of Christianity, in regards to their Judaism, in regards to their theological belief, it motivates Jews that even when they might leave, let's say, Orthodox Judaism, to still maintain that special bigotry or hatred of Catholicism. And we see that down through the ages where, you know, a lot of these revolutionary movements were deliberately spurned on or encouraged by Jews, even if they weren't Orthodox or Hasidic, right? Because of the special animosity that they were raised with to negatively regard the Catholic Church. And so I think it's a theological issue ultimately.
So you said Revelation, which I would kind of like to I've got a different topic that I'd like to get onto if we can do that. Is that cool, Jordan?
Oh yeah,
of course. Before we do that, I did want to give just keep that topic in mind. Revelator, I wanted to give you one last chance to speak before you go. And
thank you.
No, you're good. I want to give you a chance. I want to give NorCal a chance because I've had him as a speaker for about 30 minutes. Haven't had a chance to get to him. Let me just get to some of these people that have had their hand up for a while, and then HHC, just keep that in mind, and we'll kind of go back to more of a Pinesap HHC thing, if that's cool. So Revelator, you go, NorCal, and then we'll get to Fake. Your ad is, or your name is, it says Fake. Just try to make it quick, and so we can get back to HHC and Pinesap.
Of course. I got to leave at 9:30, so I'm going to do this. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. You know, and HHC, just to say that, I want to make this very clear. I am a Groyper. We're all Groypers almost, and we don't hate people. We don't hate Jewish people. We don't hate black people. We don't hate anyone. And I just feel like that is a massive misunderstanding that people have of Groypers. And that people will just I get this all the time where I'll argue with my dad on these topics, and then he'll be like, "Oh, you hate these people." It's like, I really don't. I don't like seeing bloodshed. I don't. It's just that I just want to be honest, and I feel like if we don't address the full issue, we'll never solve the problem. I've been to Africa, I've been to Nigeria, I've seen it, and sometimes it really just makes me weep. Just the state that black people are in everywhere. And Nick had this accurately, whether it's Africa, whether it's Haiti, Jamaica, black Americans, black British people, all the groups are dysfunctional. No one wants to be around us. And it makes complete sense. It makes me cry a little bit. It makes me ashamed to be black sometimes. It really does. And it's just that whenever you try to talk about this, you always just get showered with hate, and people will always just assume the worst intentions about you. Same with Nick and Candace. Oh, the only reason you're bringing this up, you're just an evil racist. You just think all black people are stupid. All of this, it's always the same thing. And
stereotypes exist for a reason. Except for Groypers.
But yeah, man, I just want to say, as Nick does say, we do love everyone. We do love everyone, and thank you for the unblock. Mm-hmm. But thank you for having me on. I don't want to take any more of your time, but thank you.
No, you're good. Thanks for coming on, Revelator. We'll get you on. I'm going to do more of these spaces in the future, so definitely have you on.
Thanks a lot, man.
Absolutely.
Hope to see you guys again. Thanks, man.
Yeah, man. NorCal, did you want to jump in really quick? Did you have something specific you wanted to do? And then we'll do fake after that, and then HHC will get to kind of back on the rails a little bit of you and Pinesap going back and forth.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jordan. And, I guess I do have a specific question, but it's a little vague. And, before I get going, Pinesap, thank you for everything you do. Your posts every day make my timeline and light my day up. So thank you, man.
Of course, brother. You guys are the reason why I do it. I hope you always know that.
You are really like a shining light in our movement, and you help so much, and you give a lot of people hope every day. But anyways, basically kind of what I was trying to bring up and talk about and kind of pick your guys' brains about is kind of more so this modern state of politics and just the whole situation with Charlie and going forward, and how Thursday, Nick's message was just I thought it was perfect. I thought, as Christians, our main goal a lot of the time is to unify and push peace and love, unconditional love, towards the whole world. And I thought he encapsulated that really well, in his whole monologue in that whole show. And, kind of what I've been, you see a lot of this hate after that online towards Groypers and, pinning the whole thing on us and the movement in general. And at the same time, you do get some love, and seeing Matt Walsh come out and speak positively of us was great. But then, also today, seeing Candace come out and attack Nick blatantly was just, it was just kind of disheartening. Where we are trying our best to unify the right wing. I thought Nick made a really good statement of these people don't know what civil war looks like, and what that could really result in. And seeing, in my mentions all day yesterday was just, I'm kind of calling for peace and unifying and all that, all this kind of good moral things, and me getting met with, how could you say this kind of things? We need to start fighting. We need to go up in arms. And I just think to myself, you guys, echoing what Nick said, is you guys do not know what a civil war would look like. It would be barbarism. It would be death. It would be bloody. It would be terrible. So I just wanted to kind of pick your guys' mind on how we kind of go forward when you have people within the right wing who will, attack us and slander us. And then what do we do with kind of these people? Like, do we put our faith into Matt Walsh, who has countersignaled us for so many years? And, I see the good faith action in standing up for us and being honest and speaking truth, and I commend that. I think that's awesome. But at the same time, it's like, do we put our trust into these kind of bad faith actors in the past who are working for Ben Shapiro or the Daily Wire and these people that hate us and frankly want to kill us? So I just kind of wanted to pick your guys' mind on that and what you guys kind of see going forward and how we kind of navigate the space going forward.
I have a very brief answer to that, and then if you guys want to go, it's actually really quick. As far as kind of how to react to some of these people in light of the Charlie Kirk incident, again, rest in peace, God rest his soul. I think the big thing going forward is going to be whether or not these Matt Walsh types show any type of good faith to our movement. I know this is kind of like Groyper inside baseball, so I don't want to spend too long on this. It's going to really depend on if they act in good faith. I think Matt Walsh's tweet was a good sign. I think that's good to say right now. I think that indicates possible good things in the future. But something Matt Walsh said also made me shirk a little bit. He said a couple days ago, he said, now is the time to bury the hatchet and to, come together as the right wing, which I agree with. But what is that actually going to look like? Is he going to let Nick on his show? He's going to just do whatever you guys want? It's like, no, if he's serious about uniting the right wing, I think Nick would act in good faith towards Matt Walsh. So it's going to depend on whether or not these people are willing to meet us in the middle, or if they're just expecting us to say, hey guys, something horrible happened to Charlie, therefore we need to go back into the fold of GOP politics, I don't think that that's the right takeaway. If they want to act in good faith and meet us in the middle and have conversations and meet there, that's fine. But it's going to take some goodwill on both of our parts, but it is going to involve them opening up conversations a little bit, and that whether or not they'll do that remains to be seen. So that's my takeaway, at least.
I really hope that in many ways, the sacrifice, what Charlie gave for us in terms of, bearing the truth, going out there and going to these speaking engagements and ultimately dying for spreading the truth, dying for spreading biblical values, can mean the death of the moderate right. And what I mean by that is not in encouraging violence, not in encouraging unneeded contention or what have you, but the realization that we do need to lawfully and ethically level power to our advantage. Because I think for so long, what the right has said in this country, or the mainstream right has said, is, oh, well, imagine if the shoe was on the other foot. Well, gosh, golly gee, imagine if this was happening to us. Well, it is happening to us, right? It is happening to us, right? And what are you going to do about it? Because if you're just sitting here and you're just saying, oh, gosh, that sucks. Well, look at those Democrats. They sure are hypocrites or what have you, right? That means nothing. That means absolutely nothing. It means nothing if we don't have lawful and good and ethical action to change this country. And I even think that there are, some more liberally inclined or even left-wing people who are included in that. I mean, Dean, I saw, was remorseful over Charlie's death. Kink was remorseful over Charlie's death. I think that those people are reasonable, and those we can sit down and have a conversation with, and even mutually agree that while they do have a worldview, we are still going to, fight against, not with ballots, we are going to fight with ballots, but not with bullets, but with words, right? In the sword of the spirit. They are still real human beings, and they are still good people. But these monsters, these people who are openly calling for more conservatives to be killed, these people who are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, we can't have any unity with them. And I do think that the power of the federal government does need to be leveled to name, shame, and even put these people in jail, because I think they deserve to have their lives ruined.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that at this point we've.
Whoops. Oh shoot!
Nope.
Hey, I accidentally muted the space. NorCal, you can.
That's okay.
I was trying to go
My bad.
as I clicked the people who wanted to speak. That person went away, and I accidentally clicked mute. So NorCal, you can start over. Sorry about that.
Okay, yeah. No, I totally agree, Pinesap. I think that we've kind of put up with this for so long, and we have tried to, not saying that we're going to stop turning the other cheek, but maybe we kind of let it happen to us a little too much, and kind of let them walk all over us for many years now, and my background is I was a lurker in this movement for years, and finally decided, seeing the state of everything, seeing how, kind of the destruction of our country, I decided to, I need to be involved in this and make my voice heard. And I think trying to convince more and more people of doing that and getting involved, there are more people that are feeling the same way that we are feeling, wanting more conservatism, seeing how the lack of, even the moderate conservatives, nothing has changed, nothing has gotten better, things just continue to get worse. So more and more people are coming to our side, more and more people will, understand the Groypers' position and our position in general. But I think you're right. It is kind of about stepping forward now and kind of using these tactics, lawfare, how you said, involving federal government to put these people into jail, who are advocating for more murders, more death, more destruction of our society, and frankly, lack of morality. This whole transgender, everything. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's destroyed our whole nation, and it's going to continue unless we finally step up and are able to fight back. And I really feel like we haven't really done that yet. We've met them with moderate conservatism and kind of just a bunch of nothing. And so I totally agree with you, Pinesap, both of you guys, Jordan and Pinesap. And thanks for letting me talk. And I don't want to take too much time away from the space. I know there was kind of a whole different topic kind of going into this, but I appreciate you. I just kind of wanted to get that off my chest. This whole Charlie thing and the state of modern politics really is it's important too, and appreciate the prayer at the beginning, Pinesap. So thank you, man. Thank you all you guys for everything.
No, of course.
Absolutely, man. I'll go more Fate, because he had his hand up earlier, and then we'll let Pinesap and HHC, because I know in HHC, I hope you haven't forgotten what you wanted to ask Pinesap earlier and what you wanted to talk about. But let me just get to Fake, and then we'll get back to y'all too, and kind of get it back on the rails a little bit. So Fake, if you want to go, and then we'll jump back into those two. And Fake, you just need to unmute, I think.
It shows me that Fake went to listener.
So, okay. Oh, yeah, me too, just now. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think we're good. I do have two requests here that I'm going to hold off on. Pretty Hot and Mexican Groipa. I'm going to get to y'all once we wrap this up a little bit. But yeah, HHC, Pinesap, what did you want to bring up to Pinesap, HHC?
Yeah. So this is just another thing I had on my long list here. So you got pretty blasted not that long ago, Pinesap, about your appearance on what was it, Jubilee, or was it something else?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on Jubilee.
Yeah. And it was about like you embraced the term fascism. Is that fair to say?
Yes. And the reason I did that, or you can continue, but yeah, that was the interaction.
You'll probably answer my question will probably have you give you the answer you're just thinking of. But what I was just wondering, so I consider fascism to be a lot more of a specific 21st century sort of phenomenon, and what you seem to be is a lot more of a older style Catholic integralist that I wouldn't really consider a fascist, at least not. Well, I don't know. Are you like big like pro Franco guy? What's your deal?
I love Franco and will defend his legacy to my death.
Okay.
I think he was a hero. I think he is an honorable man. I think anyone who disses him doesn't have any good basis to diss him because, it's like that interaction with Mehdi. Oh, he killed people. Well, he killed communists and leftists and people who thought it was okay to like rape nuns and, denigrate statues of Our Lady. It's like, I don't really feel bad for those people at all. I think they kind of got what was coming to them. I feel bad when people are hurt because they're innocent and they didn't do anything wrong. I don't feel bad when I think a group of people who had this horrendous and evil ideology that encouraged, literally the depopulation of priests and faithful Catholics in some areas kind of got what was coming to them.
Okay. So I guess what I would ask would be like, would you define, and I haven't looked into to Franco specifically to any like real extent. So I'm a lot more I focus a lot more on the National Socialist stuff just because that seems to be a lot more of the popular thing to defend in the circles that I run in my opinion, unfortunately. But would you consider things like early colony America, 17th, 18th century England, something like this, to be fascist? Or would you say that like fascism really is like a 21st century ideology, or excuse me, 20th century ideology that requires like a strong man and then like the state being viewed as absolute lord to a degree and things like this? Like, what would you like? Do you have a very broad definition of fascism, or?
So I think what maybe fell on deaf ears during the debate, and some people still don't understand it. I get that annoying howling mutant guy who's like, he's like on my nuts all the time about, my Jubilee appearance, and it's very annoying. I should just block him. But a lot of people always say, oh well, you said you were a fascist, or you said you were this, and I'm not saying you're one of these people. I'm talking about these other figures. But what they don't understand is that the reason I just sort of embraced Mehdi calling me that was because when the left uses the term fascism, it doesn't really have any true meaning. It doesn't really have any like real meaning to it. It doesn't have any real heart to it. It's just sort of this empty term that they use to denigrate, I think, an authentic Christian response that would involve the utilization of the government to enforce Christian morality. And so I am so tired, and I still am, and I will never go back on this till the day I die, of people using that term and expecting me to give like a 5-page dissertation about, oh, no, here's how I'm like really not the bad guy and this or that. It's like, call me whatever you want. I'm someone who believes in Jesus Christ because he gave me my life back when I didn't want to live it anymore. And I promised him for the rest of my life that I would live my life for him. And so, they can tear me down, they can call me whatever they want. But the fact is that our country is dying and our world is dying because we don't have a Christian government. We don't have a government that enforces morality. We have children being sodomized and raped. We have women who are killing literal babies. We have, a group of young men that are committing suicide because they have no lack of meaning. And when I see that, and I see some smug guy like Mehdi Hassan sitting across from me and just, touting his typical slithering journo smile, I just was done. I was like, you call me whatever you want, man. I'm done playing your little game. And so for me, they would most certainly call the founding fathers fascist. If we're not using their, retarded and arbitrary definitions,
Right.
fascism really. I know you're not, and if you hear any anger in my voice, it is not directed towards you, my brother. I've literally been put through hell and back, and so these people have kind of brought out a beast in me that I think they'll wish that they hadn't unleashed. But so to speak. In regards to fascism proper really only applies to Italy and maybe like Oswald Mosley, right? Like a distinct, this is how sort of a corporative economy works. This is how the government should be structured, you know, the totality of the state, etc. And I think if I actually sit down with like the works of Giovanni Gentile or what have you, I actually disagree with Gentile in a true and academic sense, not just in a rhetorical, oh, well, they labeled him a fascist. He's a bad guy, so I can't agree with them. I don't really give a damn about that. But you know, I do disagree with a lot of some of the particular fascist ideologues' views because of their lack of commitment, I think, to Christ. And then there are other figures that happen to be lumped in with the term fascism, or maybe they were even called fascists in their day, but I think were true believers and just wanted to see a government that elevated Christ. And that latter category, I would absolutely say I'm emboldened by and I'm inspired by. I mean, any faction of the Spanish Civil War, any of the like foreign legions, like the Legion of Saint Joan of Arc from France, or the Romanian legionnaires that came to fight on behalf of the Catholic Church. You know, if they're considered fascist, so be it, and I don't really care. But those men I draw inspiration from. Those men I admire, and those men, if I could just be even 1% of the heroes they were, my life would be complete.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, so I haven't looked into fascism a lot more broadly, into Mosley and sorry, I'm getting an echo from somebody.
Oh no, that's fine.
Anyway, but I guess my what I was really curious about was the idea of, I can understand dismissing the left's perspective on what fascism is, because my views, being more theonomist, would be considered fascist by like a lot of like leftists like Nettie, right? So I can understand that. I would be super hesitant, I guess, to embrace the label on the basis of what is all tied up into it, kind of like you just described about what you would have disagreed with on some of those fascist intellectual guys. But that was kind of what I was wondering, was how broadly you applied that, because I do interact with a lot of people that that would be NatSoc, pro-Hitler type guys who would very much embrace the fascistic ethos. And because I engage with a lot of that, you know, from as Christian a perspective as I can, I didn't know to what extent you really embrace that label, or if it was just more rhetorical. And it sounds like it was more rhetorical, and then you can pick out some individuals and some specific things that you're in favor of.
That's a completely fair assessment.
Yeah. One thing you said on Elijah Schaefer's show was about, because I watched a clip from you on there a little while ago, and you were mentioning like that you understood fascism as being like the church's morality brought into life. And that was kind of like, oh, I didn't really agree with that understanding of fascism, right? Because that's like, I wouldn't consider that's the way that the left.
That's the way that the left characterizes it. It's not, if we're using academic definitions, no, that's not the academic definition by any means. But you know, it's like how the left will be like, oh, you're literally creating the Handmaid's Tale with Gilead, or you're literally doing this, or you're literally a fascist or whatever. It's like, well, if there's going to be an enforcement of a state based on Catholic morality and you call it fascist, then, you know, mene frego, I don't care.
Right. No, I can understand that. So, all right. We got somebody else. I think we got Fake back in here.
Yeah. Fake, did you want to add or ask anything?
Yeah, sorry guys, my phone died. Actually, quick question for HHC: were you a convert, or did you grow up Protestant?
I grew up Protestant, and I grew up Southern Baptist. I am now a member of a PCA church, Presbyterian Church of America. I remain Credo Baptist, but I have come into an agreement with the polity of Presbyterianism. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Gotcha. So for my question, just a bit of a warm up. I I saw your tweet the other day, and listening to you now, I don't feel like this, but I kind of roll my eyes like when I saw your response to Nick's speech at first. But then, listening to you right now, I kind of thought about it more. And I think you're right, because, speaking as a convert, I think
look at us repairing HHC's image in real time. It's beautiful.
well, no, it's real though, because
all it takes is you just read my tweets, man.
speaking as a convert, right? Like, I realize, like, I don't even notice, like Nick like goes on those things. I don't even notice the swearing. But it's funny because I'll go recently. I come back. I converted in college. I come back home. I'm getting really involved. And actually very Protestant-oriented groups, and all the girls and the Protestants, these Protestant girls, very nice people. They're calling me out for my language. I'm like, wait, what the heck?
You don't even.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, though, because like you don't even think about it now. Okay, so that's just a setup, because I kind of figured you were. I kind of had a guess. Us converts, I don't even think we think twice about it. It's just kind of the culture we're in. With that being said, do you think? Because I've been I was so interested in listening to you, and I've been going on like kind of a similar line of thinking with Nick. I think sometimes in my brain, you know what I realized? I realized I could not send Nick speeches to like the women in my life at first. I have a very good relationship with my sister, very good relationship with my girlfriend, but I there's no shot I'm sending them
that more
Nick
answers
videos.
that more vindicates Nick on the female question.
I agree. Listen. I 100% agree. But I guess, sorry, this is a long setup. Do you think, HHC, that we might just be wanting too much out of Nick? Like what if it just doesn't? I got to the place where I was like, this is just kind of like, I just want this thing, But maybe that's just not what Nick is. Maybe, his movement, his thing is to appeal to, frankly, men. But also more broadly, like, I don't do you think he has to appeal to like random Protestants, I guess? Like, when you see the stuff that we all see online with the absolute extremes on the right, like the total nut job crazy people. Like, I mean, honestly, I see Nick. I see Nick as honestly a limiting force right now, and a really good one at that. Like, when you watch his Charlie Kirk thing, so just maybe he isn't meant to appeal to like, the people that we may necessarily want him to appeal to. Like, do you think there could still be like a really prominent place for him to, kind of take the more radical element and kind of contain it, kind of draw it in, kind of put it on a solid trajectory? Because that's kind of the place I got to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's a really good question. I think, so I would say there's I'll address the thing about the women first. I'll address the women question first. I think it does indicate something if like half of the people that are regenerate believers are going to have a very negative reaction to your content, even if it's not directed at women. So I would say that like, as much as I do think there's an aspect of it that could be dismissed, I wouldn't totally dismiss it out of hand. When it comes to Nick improving, I would say I think I told you, JB, when we texted about this like a week ago, that I've seen some improvement from his direction on some of this. I don't think that Nick has to do XYZ or whatever. But I don't think it's wrong to exhort somebody professing to be a Christian to align their speech and behavior to their profession, right? And I think that ultimately that improves things if he does, and I think he has to a degree. I think that he's noticed a lot of the some of the more dissident stuff that is pretty bad, and has spoken out against that, and I think that's a good development. I think on the scale of things, I try to critique Nick from a biblical perspective, which doesn't come from the left, because people will say, well, Nick is already getting so much crap, why are you adding to it? And it's like, well, Nick is getting a bunch of crap that he should ignore, and then he's getting some crap that he should probably pay attention to. And so I'm kind of in the camp of giving him some crap that I think he probably ought to pay attention to. And I don't think the mass of all these people that hate him for a lot of dumb reasons really invalidates that necessarily. I think he can ultimately be a pretty good force. I think on some degree, or so to some level, he has been. But I appreciate you sort of recognizing my point earlier about some of the inconsistencies that I had noticed. Pinesap, you have something to point out?
No, I mean, just what I would say again is that I'm not opposed to improving language or what have you, but I think when I consider this movement, I've had a lot of people in the Catholic space like browbeat me because, I don't know, like Nick curses on a live stream or something. And my thoughts are, you're missing the bigger picture, right? Like if someone's going to like not, and I'm not saying you're saying this, HHC, this is just my, what I'm used to interacting with online, at least in kind of the Catholic sphere. But if you're going to like denigrate or not interact with a movement that is literally fighting for us, and I think is the most successful means of accomplishing a real Catholic political response in this country, because I don't know, the guy says the F word once in a while. It seems really childish and nearsighted. Whereas I think hold on. Whereas if, kind of the example tweet I gave out before, or even the examples I've had IRL where someone's come up to me and they're like, yeah, I love Nick. Maybe I wish he'd tone it down on the language sometimes, clean that up. But like, I think he's representing a good movement. I think he's representing like a good response, and like, I'm all for it. I think that's where I would then agree with the kind of like encouraging better language. But I think to write off AF.
That's the most common response I've gotten with regards to what HHC is pointing out, is he should clean it up a little bit, but the message is great. That's what I've been seeing, at least.
Yeah,
well, but the message is that's tainted. The message is tainted if it contradicts itself, even theologically. Like, so for instance, what's kind of being summarized here is just like the F word bad, and I don't think that's really what I'm trying to communicate here, right? It's one thing to say the F word in conversation as a adjective to describe an emphasis on something, right? It's a different thing to like quote Christ calling, when Christ says that like we murder each other with our words, and then call Hassan a cocksucker, right? Like that contradiction is more than merely using the words cocksucker, right?
But who is Hassan? But who is Hassan? And that's what I've kept on bringing up is, maybe I would be more inclined to agree.
Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe I would be more inclined to agree with you if Hassan was just like, I don't know, just some random lefty, but he wasn't like an absolute piece of human garbage. If he was more like Dean Withers, where, Dean still showed some humanity when Charlie died. But this is a guy who is celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. And I kind of think that, even if you're wanting to avoid that language, or it's like maybe ultimately best to avoid that language, I don't think it's a fundamental betrayal of the gospel if you call someone who celebrates the death of a father and a Christian a cocksucker.
I guess
that's just my piece.
I would ask HHC then, like, and this isn't like a rhetorical, like, seriously, is there anybody that deserves to have that language levied at them? Or would you say that any person who has that language, levying that language against any person is automatically is anti-biblical? Like, would you put anybody in that category who deserves to have that language used against them?
Yeah, so because I'm a Calvinist, I really hate the word deserved, because on some level it's like, yeah, who deserves that language?
Actually,
it's like,
yeah,
well,
I hate the.
We all deserve, so.
No,
but at the same time, I
agree.
Yeah, I will. I'll say I don't think Christians should be calling people cocksucker. That's what I will say. That I don't, and I think if you were to poll believers, I don't think it would matter the type of. I'm sorry, you're quieter, so I don't hear you. Go ahead, George.
Sorry. All I would ask is do you think there's anybody where it's appropriate to use that language against them? I guess would be the way I would rephrase it.
I do not think so. No.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that if you were to ask, like I said, if you were to poll believers in your church, my church, whatever, do you think it's appropriate to ever use the term to describe someone as cocksucker derogatorily? I think that most people would say no. And I think your pastors would. would say no. And I think if you came at him with, well, what if the guy's really horrible? I don't think that would exactly, like, would that work in the confession booth?
Well, no, but I think the difference fundamentally is there's something different between, let's say, Nick was promoting adultery and saying you should cheat on your wife because this other girl is hot, versus someone saying, oh, this guy who is literally advocating for the death of other people and just celebrated the death of a father and a husband, I in anger call him a cocksucker. I know for a fact my priest would say something to the effect of, yeah, maybe it's best not to use that term, but like, I understand that you were just angry for, the righteousness of God's sake, and that you were still angry for the right reason versus advocating for sin. And I think that's the fundamental difference. One
I would
still comes, I think, ultimately from a place of righteous anger, even if slightly misdirected in the choice of language. I think the other is a full, like the other hypothetical I gave was a like full advocacy of sin that would then invalidate someone's faith. And I think that's the difference.
And I would agree, and I wouldn't say that this would invalidate that would invalidate Fuentes' faith. And I would agree that it is different when used out of righteous frustration, as opposed to just hating somebody for unrighteous reasons. So I agree with all that. I guess what I'm hung up on is, like, I don't think it was that long ago when that sort of language among Christians, professing Christians, was universally rejected. Like, I don't think that was that long ago. And I think maybe because we have grown up in a secular age, we have become more accepting of it, where especially older people are not. Right, like I can tell you that for a fact, if I poll people over 50 at my church, they will tell me that they would be completely against any Christian calling someone else a cocksucker. And if you said, well, I was full of righteous indignation and the guy was really bad, which he is, I don't think that would actually I can't see that conversation going in the direction of, oh yeah, you know what, you're right, like, or.
I think this is where my comment about the piety signaling came in. Is I think the more nuanced response, at least I would get among Catholics, would be, yeah, probably not best to use that term, but I completely understand where he's coming from, and I agree with the righteous indignation. It's not just call people that I don't like or that are wrong bad words, or reducing my point to that extent. It's that I don't think that suddenly we have to take the label Catholic off being a groiper because Nick called a, horrible monster a cocksucker. I don't agree with that. I think that when you're in a war and when you're in a battle, sometimes you have a moment of anger. You call an evil person a certain phrase or a certain word. I know that Saint Jerome called, certain heretics particular adjectives. I know that even Saint Paul, I'm trying to remember the exact verse or where in scripture it was, but had used a particular term that even in his own time would have been kind of considered a curse word. I even know that Saint Thomas More literally wrote a letter back to Luther saying, your shitty mouth is so full of shit that it's spewing out, right? And he's in heaven praying for us right now. And so, if St. Thomas More could do that, and, maybe people at most would be like, maybe it would have been best had he not said that, but like, undoubtedly Luther was horrible. He destroyed the church, and his place of anger was coming from a righteous place. I feel the same way towards Nick, and I think that's where I'm coming from. It's not that I'm adverse to improving our language. I'm all for it, but it's that I think this kind of like spiraling over him calling, because you said it was a political opponent. Well, it's a lot more than that. Hassan Piker just advocated for the death and celebrated the death of a father and a husband. It gets to such a level of egregious evil that I think I'm not gonna spiral over someone like that being called like a piece of shit or a cocksucker, because I think he is both those things.
What this reminds me of is, I've, in my personal life, I've confessed that, and HHC brought up the confessional language, and especially in this space at times, especially in this space, being a little bit uncharitable to our enemies at times. And I've told my priest like what I've said about people before, and it's that kind of response where it was like from the priest, it wasn't it was very much a, like you said, we do get caught up in the moment sometimes. Definitely work on that, but good on you for examining your conscience to the extent that you're, aware of that. I'm not in Nick's confessional. Maybe he's confessed that already, and maybe it's something he's working on. I know his messaging has gotten a lot better as far as, HHC, we've talked about that a lot of the messaging he has regarding, we kill people every day with our words. And, you had the super chatter, I think a week ago saying, I'm not praying for a child killer. And Nick was like, who do you think you are? You're a sinner. So
yeah, I thought that was excellent. I retweeted that and I thought that was excellent. I'm not above, like I said, I'm trying to be very balanced here. I guess, and I can't, I don't think I'm going to be able to really get the point across, because I think it is still getting caught up in the idea of Nick as personally and his and profanity. There's a disconnect between Christian organizations that are out there and growing political ones, especially full of young people, in terms of language and things like this. And I feel like the reason that disconnect exists is because, as much as we don't think this has happened, a lot of us have imbibed a lot of secularism of the spirit of the age that we're in. And so I'm always going to encourage and push for an alignment of those things. And I do hold public figures that profess to be Christians to an extremely high standard. I'm not going to deny that. I do think it's an extremely high standard. Yeah, but I think one of the reasons why we were able to have, why we are today able to have so many Christian organizations in this country that I think are led by very righteous people who is because we did have that very high standard. And we did hold them to account for language and contradictory speech that's contradictory to Scripture. And I'm not even just talking about profanity. I mean broadly even. And I think because we've never seen, we've grown up in such a secular environment, we've lost that. And I think the older people especially can see that and they recognize it. And it's why I think it's limiting on some of these movements. But anyway.
I do need to wrap up.
We've hit on that a lot.
Yeah. I wrap up. We're at 3 hours now.
Damn.
Yeah, I know. It flew by. I did want to try to get Groip Rican. I already let you speak, so I do want to try to get in a couple of people who haven't spoken yet. Like I said, I am going to do more of these spaces in the future because I think this was an obvious success. So I'm going to get to Pretty Hot really quick, see what they want to say, and then I'll do Hitler loved Christ. So that'll be interesting. And then after those two, I probably need to put a book.
That's perfect.
Really appreciate the opportunity.
Here we go. What you got?
Oh, sorry about that. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm a fan of Pinesap. Basically, my question.
Can you guys not hear anything either?
Yeah, he dropped.
No,
shoot. I thought that was only me for a moment.
Classic X behavior over here.
Dude, they got to optimize this app more. It's kind of insane.
Yeah, it's not ideal. It has its uses, but it's not ideal. Hate to end on that term because that was the last one. The other Hitler loved Christ dropped off. So that may be a good place to kind of wait. Hold on, let's see what happened. I think they may have.
I got two. Can I get two rapid fires on Pinesap real quick? Oh, we got something else. Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let me get. Are they here?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Hey, sorry about that. Basically, what I'm getting at is something that was being touched on vaguely throughout the conversation. Is that with the Overton window feeling like it's shifted like 900x over the last 48 hours, how do we, as a community, a broad community, the conservatives, come together and kind of rewrite the narrative over the the rapid attack that's going on, specifically what I would call libel from the MSM. And I'm sorry if this isn't, completely pertaining to what we were talking about before, but it's the main question that's on my mind right now.
The libel against against like basically the Groyper movement, or the libel against...
Well, they're calling the guy a Groyper, right? Which is really stupid.
That is libel.
I
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not true.
That's literally blood libel. I mean, like by definition, it's not true.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. That's specifically against Nick and the Groypers. That's specifically what I'm talking about. It's just not true, and it wasn't true when they wrote it, and it's still being written as we speak.
Are you saying that because he did a Slav squat that he's not a Groyper? I'm confused.
Yeah,
that was crazy. That's crazy, dude.
Well, that just shows you how many new heads are in this movement that they don't know what the squatting Slav meme is. I assumed everybody knew what squatting Slav was, and yeah, that was insane to me.
I think everybody who's gotten involved in politics since 2020 needs to be deleted from the internet.
That is true, and that's pretty racist against Indians, HHC. I'm just going to say that.
Listen, it's not even a race-based thing. It would just happen to get a lot of them. Okay?
Exactly.
Just happen to.
Yeah, that's pretty racist there. No, I'm just kidding. No, you can keep going. Pretty hot.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not a public speaker, so I am pretty nervous right now. But basically, this I don't see a whole swath of people being misinformed, with no recourse of going back on their liberal beliefs because they're so entrenched. I just think it's going to lead to mass discord because the only prospective audience we have right now is young white men, majoritively. Obviously, Groyper movement isn't essentially white, but I just don't see that demographic is large enough to ride out the storm, essentially. And I think the only way, I don't know how we get our message across without diluting it, essentially. That's my question.
Well, diluting it's impossible. We can't do that because that's exactly what Con Inc. has done, and that's why we've been losing this country. I mean, if we want, Waileguru prayers and porn stars speaking on stage at the RNC forever, that's what will happen if we dilute it. I think the thing is that we have to realize that at some point the people who are meant to come to our side will come to our side, and we reach out to those people when we affect those people, when we touch their hearts. But the other people who can't, kind of depending on who they are, there's different approaches needed, right? Someone like Kank, I don't know if, he would ever come around, right? Because he is a pretty staunch liberal, but he is still a reasonable person. And so I think that people like him should be addressed reasonably and talked to reasonably, and there should be a level of civil discourse with them. But someone like Destiny or Hassan Piker, who is completely unreasonable, when we win, they just need to be thrown in jail. They need to have their rights taken away. There's not going to be any reasonable approach with them, and we have to accept that, because this idea that we're going to get people who with these particular people, we're going to get people that hate Christ on our side by trying to water down or reach across the aisle or what have you. That's not only a bad idea because it would result us watering down the gospel, but it's impossible until they are willing to open their heart enough to allow God to act upon it. And once they do, we will embrace them as a brother and a friend. But if they are unwilling to do that and their heart is hardened like Pharaoh, then we need to just consider them an enemy and be okay with that. Basically what I'm trying to say is we have to be okay with the fact that some people are our enemies, and that's fine. And we have to accept that, and we have to operate within that context. It shouldn't be about trying to appeal to as many people as possible, but appeal to those good-hearted people who are still real human beings.
Yeah, I would also, the only thing I would not push back on you, Pinesap, I would just push back a little bit on the idea that we don't have a big enough microphone to repel these ideas. I mean, Nick did get 274,000 at its peak live viewers on Thursday. I know that's not going to be... Yeah, but okay, but let's say that that's true. You know,
It's something.
even if you add, I know we talked about this, even if you add up the views that like Kai Cenat, you have to assume that a lot of his views are botted too. All of these streamers, and I'm not saying Nick is consciously doing this, I'm just saying that, you know, with a lot of these big streamers, you have to assume that a lot of their views are botted. So it's kind of an equal playing one most viewed stream that night among all influencers, among all streamers. I don't think that you can kind of disregard that. I think there is something to be said for that. And I don't say this flippantly and I don't say this lightly. I'm just saying that especially without Charlie Kirk there is the intangible that a lot of the influence that he had, people are going to radicalize, not even in a violent way. Nick is just factually further right than Charlie Kirk was. That's just factual. A lot of these people are going to move to Nick from Charlie Kirk, and even in a numbers way, like a lot of the people that would have been listening to Charlie will now listen to Nick. So I think that microphone is growing. I think that microphone is getting louder, the ability to push back on this. So that's the only thing I would say there. I completely agree with Pinesap and what he said also.
Well, yeah, just want to thank you guys again for letting me ask the question. And I am totally on the same mind. It's just, you know, with all the recent happenings and you know, my main concern was just seeing large demographics and then how that would affect, you know, political action and the voting booth. But I understand that our main focus has to be with Christ, and it's just a really scary time. That's where my head's at right now.
No, of course. And I wasn't trying to also lecture you either, brother, about reaching out to people or what have you. I hope I didn't come off as aggressive. I guess I was just trying to impress upon all of us that we're in this time where we have to be realistic about what's going on, right? Like there are people out there right now that if they had the opportunity to would kill every single person in this space. And that's a scary thing, right? That's a very terrifying thing. But what it demands is not cowardice, and what it demands is not backing down and biting down and trying to, I hate this term so much that the left has been using, but cool the temperature. What it demands is that we have a fervent, zealous, and Christ-like approach to this time in trying to reach out to the people who are good-hearted, trying to appeal to the good-hearted people, trying to impress upon them that we've got their back, but then with the wicked striking them down with the edge of the law. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, totally agree, man. I apologize to the three people that are requested. I am going to have to end this after HHC gets his rapid fires in.
I have 3 rapid fires.
Okay, go for it.
All right. There was the tweet I saw the other day. Hold on, let me pull it up here. September 10th. So I guess it was just 2 days ago. It was the Presbyterian Inn, and they had tweeted something out about the magisterium of Rome binding the conscience of Catholics against the death penalty. What is your kind of what's that, JB? Oh, he's cutting in and out.
Yeah, you're kind of cutting in now, Jordan.
Anyway, I was just going to ask Pinesap, like, kind of how he, because you're not a Vaticanist, and I'm curious how you handle that.
So, Donum Veritatis issued under St. John Paul II, and it has full magisterial standing. It's the understanding of how we apply prudential moves or prudential sort of policies issued by Holy Mother Church into the political arena. Talks about when it is okay to choose to move with certain prudence on particular like admonitions or addresses or what have you, and how to apply them. And in regards to the death penalty, since the death penalty has full rootedness in Catholic tradition, and even Pope Benedict XVI, and I think a 2004 address said that because the death penalty is not like other life issues, it is perfectly and it's still within Catholic tradition, it's perfectly permitted for a Catholic to still believe in its legitimate use. No Catholic that believes in using the death penalty would be in disobedience to the magisterium. Considering the church herself has permitted the use of the death penalty, many of the saints, the church's tradition, patrimony, and even the Bible itself has permitted the death penalty. So you would not be acting unjustly against the order of the magisterium, so long as you still respected Pope Francis's choice to not apply the death penalty, if that makes sense.
So, I guess I'm trying to understand. So on a personal level, you as a Catholic can believe that we should have the death penalty, but given the catechism change about the church working with determination to abolish it worldwide, are you able as a Catholic in clear conscience to publicly say that we should put this person that shot Charlie Kirk to death?
Yes, you can. And you wouldn't be in disobedience to the magisterium, because it's not like advocating for abortion. It's not like it's not like any other issue in the political arena where Catholics have to staunchly oppose it. Because a Catholic can never advocate for homosexuality being permitted or abortion in any circumstance, right? But something like the death penalty, it doesn't reach that criteria of application. And so because the church has permitted it before, it is still perfectly acceptable to advocate for it publicly.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what happened. I think I was recording too long on my laptop. All I was saying a second ago is that this is HHC's favorite question to Catholics is, but what about the death penalty? You've brought this up so many times before.
Listen, y'all are the ones that made it a catechism, and it's written right there, bro. I don't am I not supposed to? I mean,
no. It's just funny to me to hear you finally bring it up to Pinesap.
It reminded me of that tweet the other day, and I get what you're saying. Again, as a Protestant, I'm gonna have to push back a little bit. It's a little confusing. The magisterium, Catechism, Catholic Church, she seeks its abolition worldwide. I'm a Catholic. I think that we should kill the guy. It's hard to figure out how that makes sense.
Well, the problem is the false misunderstanding of the magisterium. The magisterium is not meant to be the oracle of Delphi that, every single, oh, what should I eat for breakfast? Oh, this encyclical from 1288 says, it's not like that. The magisterium maps out if you're within the bounds of Catholic orthodoxy or if you are not. And as the magisterium herself has said, it is perfectly permissible for a Catholic to still legitimately uphold the use of the death penalty. And that comes from Pope Benedict XVI himself.
So that's so his statement on that is on the same level in terms of authority as she seeks for its abolition worldwide.
Yes.
Okay. And so,
yes, because for Pope Francis, it was more like, he even said it's not intrinsically, the death penalty is not intrinsically evil. He just said, we'd like to advocate for better means of imprisonment or justice that doesn't have to involve the taking of one's life. But
I
he
know
even qualified his statement.
I understand it was I read the whole bit. Anyway, we could move on from that one, but can I do my other two rapid fire?
Was that at least a sufficient answer, HHC?
I think it is an answer.
Okay.
I don't want to argue about it longer.
Fair enough.
But I appreciate
you asked a priest that, a TLM priest that at a family function.
A TLM. Yeah, I did actually. That was a different.
Yeah,
I talked to two TLM priests about that actually.
Yeah, you were at a family function of mine, and you asked the father. Well, I'm not going to say his name, but you asked a priest that, and you didn't get a sufficient answer. So hopefully, it was a little bit better from Pinesap. But
yeah, I think that was better. Yeah. Okay. Two rapid fire things. What I was listening. This is just something I thought was kind of funny or interesting. So I was listening to the pre-roll for Nick's stream on Thursday, or was it Thursday? Yes, Thursday. And there was a passage from Genesis in the pre-roll, and it was the section about crushing the head of the snake, right? The serpent, Satan. And I was curious because it used I think it was the ESV translation in the pre-roll, and it used that said that Christ will crush, that he who comes will crush the head of the snake, the seed of woman. Are you familiar with anything in the Catholic space around that and the Vulgate on that translation of that verse as Mary?
Yes.
Okay. I was just curious your thoughts on that.
Yes,
broadly.
I'm familiar with that. If the consequence of that, and when I say this, I hope you know I'm not insinuating you're doing anything subversive or whatever. But if the consequence of that, if the conclusion you're trying to draw from is that would somehow not make the church infallible or what have you, that wouldn't be the case, because the way we understand that verse is, even though the more accurate translation, and I'm still reading a bit of the literature on it to really delve into a full apologetic, but from what I know, from what I've studied, even though the verse more accurately translates to Christ crushing the head of the serpent, it is from Mary's womb. It is from her birthing of Christ that brought about that crushing of the serpent. And so in that way, she too crushes the head of the serpent. And so that exegetical understanding, popular in Catholic tradition, of Mary crushes the head of the serpent, properly understood as she contributes to the crushing of the head of the serpent, would still be licit to uphold, since she literally bore our Savior who did crush the head of the serpent.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I was just curious because I've seen it kind of go both ways in Catholic circles, and I know there's been a shift on some of the Vulgate versus the critical text Old Testament stuff, and so I was curious when I heard that, because I was like, oh, there's a lot of Catholics in here, and that's the one that was at least used in that.
Oh, yeah.
So,
no, it's a good question.
My final one, geocentrism, question mark?
It's one of those themes I'm kind of agnostic about. I'm fully a young earth creationist. I think evolution's fake and gay, but when it comes to geocentrism, I'm kind of undecided. I know Robert Sungenis has written a lot of great work on it, and I have heard his work does hold up to scrutiny pretty well. So I'd be interested to read that a little bit more, and then maybe what people have to say addressing his work. But I'm agnostic on that, which is the only thing I'll say I'm agnostic on.
Gotcha. That's all I got. Those are my rapid fires. So
awesome. Those were good questions.
Nice. Yeah, I think we can probably wrap it up there. Sorry to the two people left. Like I said, I will do more of these spaces in the future, and sorry for some of the audio issues. I'll clean those up in the future. But HHC, Pinesap, both of you guys are great friends of mine, so I really appreciate you guys taking 3.5 hours of your time on a Saturday. Really appreciate it. I think it was a good substantive convo. Like you said, at HHC, it ended up being a lot more friendly than I think a lot of people thought it would be. I wasn't too surprised about that, but no, you both are great guys, and I really appreciate you guys both jumping on tonight. Seriously.
Next time, Pinesap, I'm bringing the heat, bro. All right, I'm gonna get you, dude.
Oh, dude, that's tough. That's tough. I'll make sure to bring the big guns.
Got my
next
Catholic
time.
Catechism pulled up, bro. I'm gonna be Control F over here.
Control F on the CCC. Yeah, no,
I appreciate it. It was a really good discussion, and HHC, I apologize if I always get very sensitive about my tone towards people. I apologize if my tone is very stern or what have you. It really isn't directed towards it really isn't directed towards you. It's just I have suffered a lot fighting for this cause. I have suffered a lot going through this, and it's just something I feel very impassioned to speak out about. And so I think the sternness more came from trying to get across how serious of an issue this is, not anything that you did or said. You were very respectful during the space, and I hope you know just how much I appreciate that.
I appreciate that. And maybe do another one of these sometime or something. Maybe we get a Mormon in here, and then we can all like 5v1.
Well, I did
instead of 3v1 the non-groiper,
I did get somebody.
Dust him
I
up.
did get somebody in my DMs during the debate, a Jewish person, saying you should have a Jewish person on in this space. So,
is it JIDF? Groiper
JIDF.
Yeah, that guy's actually pretty cool. I would be
Really?
down for Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I've talked to him quite a bit. So I have a lot of based Jewish people that follow me for interesting, obvious reasons. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
my
let's do it
Mossad
again.
contacts, but yeah.
Yeah, dude. Not dispelling the Mossad rumors here. No, I'm just kidding, man. I'm just
Speaking
kidding.
of, because
I'm
there
just
are
kidding.
200 people in here, or there were a lot, or there were earlier. We got 60. If anybody does know how I can get some Mossad money to continue running this account, please let me know, because I'm not above accepting Mossad money to just keep doing what I've been doing.
Well, it's like Nick said. He was like, "Please, Qatar, if you can hear me, Qatar, if you can hear me, send me the money. China, if you can hear me, send the money." So I feel you on that. But
classic Nick Poole behavior.
yeah, dude, exactly. But yeah, thanks so much tonight, guys. And like I said, we'll do this in the future. Sorry to the people I didn't get to, but thanks to everyone for tuning in. All right, guys. I will catch y'all later. And Pinesap, HHC, you guys have a great night, and I will talk to y'all soon.
Wait, it was Tim Poole. Tim Poole.
You too, guys. God bless.
Tim
Okay.
Poole. All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Tim Poole. Yeah, I got you.
Bye-bye.
Later, man. Bye.